It all began on the night a simple late-night snack run turned into a brutal fight for survival. The black-haired young man was just minding his own business as he browsed the drinks section of a local convenience store. He reached into the chilly fridge and pulled out a glass bottle of cola. Out of nowhere, a voice behind him casually asked if that was his final choice, and he blindly agreed. But as the dark liquid sloshed inside the glass, a heavy tension dropped over the aisle. Before our boy could even turn around, the mysterious cashier violently struck him from behind and sent blood splattering across the shelves. As he crumpled to the floor, his wide eye caught the reflection of his attacker's psychotic smile. As his blood pooled on the cold tiles, his memory rewound the clock by exactly 1 hour to explain this mess. Safe in his dark bedroom, his pale fingers flew across a glowing mechanical keyboard. He openly confessed his fatal flaw. The guy was an absolute dopamine addict. He had already burned through every normal obsession under the sun, from idol groups to obscure rock bands. When those stopped hitting the spot, he chased the high through extreme sports and martial arts, desperate to find a thrill that would actually last. He threw himself out of planes and chased every adrenaline rush imaginable to push his body to the limit. Eventually, even the most dangerous stunts lost their edge and left our guy completely numb. Desperate for a fix, he turned his attention to the digital world and ground through online titles, even when the mechanics left him bitterly frustrated. Truthfully, gaming was the one vice he had sworn to avoid, yet he stubbornly reset the level to try again. A screen full of ignored messages forced him to swallow the crushing reality of a mother who simply refused to answer his calls. But the craving for a new high always won out over the heartache. He dove headfirst into the most chaotic action titles on the market to chase a stronger thrill. Our hero poured countless hours into mastering the most punishing survival sims available. Out of all of them, the only release that finally delivered the ultimate rush was a masterpiece of suffering called Apocalypse: Safe Zone. The game's lore went like this. A massive meteorite slammed into Earth and instantly triggered a deadly ice age. The catastrophic impact wiped out nearly all of humanity in the blink of an eye. Centuries passed, the frost slowly thawed, and a relatively warm interglacial period brought a fragile glimmer of hope to the wasteland. To sustain their fragile lives, the remaining humans banded together and carved out secure settlements in the snow. At least, that was the official setup. The world map featured 9 distinct safe zones with crests for names like candy, cola, cocaine, and knife. A new player selected their spawn point from 8 of those options, while the infamous knife zone remained strictly locked out. The game then dropped the avatar into the chosen territory as a helpless 10-year-old child. From there, it became a relentless grind to gather resources and prepare for the end of the world before hitting age 20. Because the exact moment that 20th birthday arrived, the second apocalypse officially kicked off. That entire decade of growth was just phase 1 of the nightmare. The real test, and the reason this guy constantly tweaked his chaotic playthroughs, began right after. Once the second disaster struck, the genre shifted entirely to survival. Every player was forced into a brutal war against the bastards from the other territories, making that initial spawn choice a matter of life and death. It all hinged on a twisted logic. The harsher the starting zone, the better the odds of actually beating the endgame. Surviving the harshest environments rewarded you with god-tier stats, and at the very bottom of that hellscape was the unlisted knife zone, populated entirely by pure psychopaths. These red-hooded lunatics would grab a weaker player by the collar and slaughter them on sight just for existing. It was exactly that kind of unhinged, unpredictable brutality that kept our boy hooked for so long. But all good things had to come to an end. He clenched his fist over the keyboard, letting out a long sigh of relief. The monitor flashed the ultimate victory message. He had officially cleared every single stage, including the impossible knife zone. Taking off his headphones, the guy just sat there in the dark, completely out of content. With nothing left to conquer, he grabbed his phone to wrap up his final piece of business. He opened the community forums and uploaded a comprehensive starting strategy guide for the hidden area under his infamous username, Dopamine Addict. Dropping massive lore dumps and survival tips for the newbies had always been his favorite little side hustle. Almost instantly, a notification pinged his screen as a user named HomeProtector dropped a comment. HomeProtector immediately spammed the thread, horrified by a walkthrough that casually demanded the mass murder of an entire starting zone. Before our guy could even respond, another user named Kush Potato jumped in to aggressively flame the newbie. Normally he scrubbed toxic replies on sight, but he decided to let this one slide. When another user asked how to even unlock the hidden area, he casually explained the requirement of clearing every single ending in the game first. Kush Potato fired back in absolute disbelief, furious that anyone would actually attempt such unhinged strategies. Our hero stared at the screen in deadpan silence. A quick tap of the block button silenced Kush Potato instantly, and the blocked gamer physically flinched at his monitor. The hater screamed in sheer frustration into the night. The endless complaints about his difficulty scaling barely registered as he scrolled down. A positive review from a loyal fan named Taejongti's Beyonce caught his eye. Satisfied, he reassured himself that true gamers appreciated his genius. With the critics dismissed, he moved on to his next thought. Quitting the game, he grabbed his jacket and wandered out into the cold night street. He walked aimlessly, desperate to find a new thrill to replace the high of his victory. The quiet neighborhood offered nothing but empty sidewalks and flickering streetlights. Just as he was about to give up, a glowing neon sign in the distance caught his attention. He stepped inside the brightly lit convenience store, the chime of the door breaking the silence. As he wandered the aisles, he noticed the layout was eerily familiar. The shelves, the signs, even the specific brands of snacks perfectly mimicked the game's safe zone. He brushed off the uncanny resemblance as just another symptom of his gaming addiction. Making his way to the back, he stopped in front of the glowing drink coolers. He reached in and grabbed a glass bottle of cola, the cold condensation chilling his palm. He carried the drink to the front counter, where the mysterious cashier stood waiting in the shadows. As he set the bottle down, the events of the opening began to play out exactly as before. He barely had time to register the strange tension in the aisle. But looking down at the glass bottle, a strange detail caught his eye. Just as he realized the label was completely missing a barcode, the mysterious cashier silently raised a weapon right behind his head. A heavy strike cracked against his skull, and the clerk calmly praised his excellent choice of beverage while blood splattered the shelves. Our boy collapsed face first onto the tile, his vision instantly fading to black. His eyes snap open to find himself wearing a strange white uniform in a completely unfamiliar environment. He doesn't panic. Instead, a twisted smile creeps across his face as he realizes he's just been handed a brand new source of dopamine. He has been dragged straight into the unforgiving reality of Safe Zone, and judging by the blonde boy losing his mind nearby, he isn't the only one who got isekai'd. The voice beside him confirms the worst. They both picked up that cursed candy cola at the convenience store. Our guy turns to the blonde kid, utterly baffled by his ridiculous online handle, Couche Potato. He instantly recognizes the name as the most toxic troll on the game's forums, and immediately roasts the kid for being a complete social misfit. Couche Potato gets defensive about his keyboard warrior habits and demands to know our hero's username in return. Dopamine Addict freezes, struck by the sheer irony of getting isekai'd alongside a hater he literally blocked. He remembers it clearly. Back in the real world, he slammed the block button on this exact user without a second thought. A massive headache is guaranteed if he drops his real gamer tag now, so he decides a little identity theft is in order. He flashes a confident smile and smoothly lies to the kid's face. He steals the name of another infamous player, T. Bauram. Couche Potato immediately asks if the notorious user Home Protector leaked the convenience store address to him too, and this guy just nods along. The blonde kid absolutely loses his mind. He pulls his hair out and screams about how Home Protector completely ruined his life. Back in the real world, that jerk Home Protector took the exact address he provided and leaked it all over the internet. And this poor kid just happened to visit the store at the worst possible time. The sheer collateral damage actually earns him a tiny twinge of pity. But this revelation carries a much darker implication. If Couche Potato found the convenience store through a viral post, then they might not be the only ones here. There could be dozens of other real people scattered across the different zones, all trapped in the exact same death game. And once the second apocalypse hits, they might be forced into a brutal PvP bloodbath just to survive. Our boy physically shakes his head, deciding to shelve that terrifying possibility and just focus on surviving the day. Suddenly, Couche Potato's face lights up as gamer logic kicks in. He excitedly asks if they get to use a game system, complete with stat points and skill windows. Striking a dramatic pose, the fanboy screams for his status window and inventory to open. A cold breeze blows past absolute silence. Desperate, he shouts every RPG term in the book and begs the universe for a quest log or a monster encyclopedia. Absolutely nothing happens, and the kid just collapses into the snow in defeat. He whines about the sheer unfairness of being thrown into an apocalyptic wasteland without so much as a starter pack. Our boy dryly questions the claim of a virtuous life while the blonde teen sweats over his past toxicity. The kid just slumps against the wall, his isekai power fantasy completely crushed. Giving up on the UI, Couche Potato asks his companion how far he actually progressed in the game, but our boy pauses. In reality, he is the only player in the entire world who cleared the brutal knife zone. He remembers his true completion screen for a second, knowing he has to seriously downplay his achievements. He casually claims he made it up to the Love Unicorn area, a flex that instantly shocks Couche Potato. Calling his bluff, the teen points out that only the legendary Dopamine Addict and his most hardcore followers ever survived that far. Then a frantic realization hits him. If the top player was the first to post the convenience store address, he might be trapped in this wasteland too. Our hero just narrows his eyes, It seems highly suspicious that a supposed hater knows his exact progression milestones. This exact user was always the very first person to drop a comment on his strategy guides. Testing the waters, my guy claims to be a massive dopamine addict stan himself. He casually mentions how often couche potato popped up in the comment section. The blonde kid immediately looks away, his face flushing red with embarrassment as his secret fanboy status is exposed. The blonde teen stammers as our boy corners him with the truth. Trembling, the kid reluctantly admits he read every single guide. Then he absolutely explodes, screaming that he upvoted every post only for that ungrateful prick to block him. A smirk crosses our boy's face as he realizes this toxic troll was actually a heartbroken tsundere fanboy the whole time. He sighs at the sheer irony of getting isekai'd alongside his own biggest fan. Still, knowing the kid supported his work bumps couche potato's internal score up by a single point. My guy addresses the earlier question about their next move. Flashing a confident smile, our hero declares his new role in this brutal world. He announces his plan to become an illegitimate child. The master plan comes straight from one of his most famous high-risk walkthroughs. They are currently in the Candy Cola Zone, a frozen wasteland at the very edge of the continent. A ruthless warlord rules over this icy territory, Commander Hayden Goodman. Our boy's master plan is to waltz right up to this tyrant and con him into believing he's his long-lost bastard son. Couche Potato immediately calls him crazy, warning that game logic won't save them in reality. Our boy just turns his back and tells the kid to walk away if he's too chicken. The fanboy scrambles after him, terrified but completely unwilling to be left alone in the snow. He frantically points out that if the commander catches even a whiff of a lie, his head will literally roll. Our hero just smirks and teases him for chickening out, while Couche Potato insists he is only trying to keep them both alive. Internally though, our boy admits the kid's panic is completely justified. They were dragged into a death game overnight. Now they are trapped in young bodies and surrounded by lethal threats. He places a hand over his chest to check his own heartbeat. The rhythm is perfectly steady, meaning despite the sheer insanity of their situation, this guy feels zero fear. A twisted smile spreads across our hero's face as he realizes this lethal reality is handing him the ultimate dopamine rush. He casually tells Couche Potato that he couldn't care less if he dies trying to pull off the con. This guy even theorizes that a game over might just be the logout button to return to reality. Couche Potato swallows hard, horrified by his companion's complete disregard for human life. Our guy calmly rationalizes the risk, and this unhinged calmness pushes the fanboy to scream that he is an absolute lunatic. The blonde kid silently pulls his hair out as the reality of being tethered to a psychopath sets in. Resigned to his fate, Couche Potato asks what his own role is supposed to be, since the illegitimate child strategy is a solo run. The question makes our boy pause, because he really does need to find a use for his sidekick. He asks if Couche Potato has completed his military service, and quickly learns the kid is only 20. Our guy's smile widens as he notes that a lack of military experience is actually perfect. A devious grin flashes across his face. He gleefully informs Couche Potato that he is enlisting in the army, leaving the boy frozen in absolute shock. Couche Potato is completely blindsided by the sudden mention of joining the military. But our guy grimly reminds his fellow gamer that right now, they are nothing but vulnerable orphans stranded in a frozen wasteland. Our guy breaks down the brutal lore of this world, explaining that the map is divided into 9 safe zones just to keep humanity from going extinct. The game's first apocalypse, known as the Ice Age, kicked off when a massive meteorite slammed into the Earth. Once, long before any of this, horrific alien creatures poured out of that crater and ravaged the frozen landscape. In response, the elite Unicorn Zone fled straight into the sky. Meanwhile, the Beer Zone sought refuge deep at the bottom of the ocean. The remaining territories had no choice but to form military forces, conducting regular subjugation missions to fight back the horde. Back in the present, our guy knows that if they enlist now, they are guaranteed to be dragged into those exact same deadly battles. The ruthless game system is bound to force his 10-year-old character onto the front lines regardless of his age, but without a home or any caretakers to rely on, the two players are completely out of options. Our hero flatly tells Couche Potato that the army will at least provide room, board, and the crucial firearms training they need to survive this nightmare. Couche Potato reluctantly agrees that survival has to come first, but he still has one massive concern. He doesn't speak a single word of English, so how is he supposed to survive in a foreign military? Our boy realizes the kid actually has a point, but he secretly smirks. After all, he mastered the language purely to write his hardcore strategy guides. Outside the enlistment office, the plan is already in motion. Our hero confidently hands over a sealed application. He tells Couche Potato that the paperwork is submitted, and they just need to wait. Since the Cola Zone accepts even 10-year-olds, he notes that their approval is practically guaranteed. Couche Potato furiously complains about getting isekai'd into a game without a Korean translation patch. He absolutely hates being completely reliant on our guy just to fill out a form. The veteran player reassures him with a simple trick. Just yell in agreement to get through most military interactions. Couche Potato looks highly skeptical of this overly simplistic advice. Meanwhile, our hero observes the adult soldiers conversing in English nearby. He notices a strange detail. None of the NPCs seem to care that the two boys are speaking a completely different language. Our boy quickly realizes that the game's post-apocalyptic melting pot lore naturally accounts for the mixed languages. Capitalizing on this loophole, he instructs Couche Potato to use Korean as a secret code for any sensitive intel. But then he drops another heavy piece of news. Once they enlist, they have to split up until he officially secures his position as Commander Hayden's successor. He correctly guesses that Couche Potato already has real-world military experience. Haytham casually suggests the fanboy use that background to survive the draft on his own. Couche Potato argues that sticking together would be a much faster way to clear the game. This pushback actually makes our hero pause to genuinely contemplate the foreign concept of cooperation. He briefly considers the zone, calculating how many other transmigrated players might be lurking around them. He decides a strict code of conduct is necessary for when they inevitably cross paths with another survivor. For now, he just barks at Couche Potato to memorize the plan and avoid acting completely incompetent. With that, our guy turns his back, officially declaring the start of his solo playthrough. Panicking, Couche Potato frantically yells for our boy to stop. The blonde boy demands to know exactly what humiliating English name Haytham scribbled on his application. Our hero just chuckles, telling him he'll find out when he's called, while the enlistment officer inside squints at the bizarre paperwork. The officer shouts out the name Darling Outsider, prompting an absolutely horrified scream from the new recruit. Looking up at the sky, our guy smugly notes that the application was processed perfectly. Later, operating entirely solo, our guy crouches on a snowy ledge overlooking the slums. He is searching for Luna Moon's grave, a spot holding a crucial item known as the Mark of the Bastard. The game's tragic lore goes like this. Commander Hayden originally hailed from an entirely different zone. Before his rise to power, a heavily injured Hayden was miraculously rescued from the brink of death by a lone medic. That lifesaver was Luna Moon. The two fell in love, and eventually had a child together. But his ambition won out, and he ruthlessly betrayed Luna to marry the previous commander's daughter for a seat of power. He falsely promised Luna that he would send for her once he took control. But it was a vow he could never keep, because shortly after, Luna Moon vanished without a trace. Just then a sudden shattering sound snaps our guy back to reality. He quickly ducks behind a wall as a drunk slum dweller wanders over to investigate the noise. Realizing how close he came to blowing his cover, our boy reminds himself to stay sharp. He remembers how the game played out. Commander Hayden desperately ordered his men to search for Luna and their child. The tragic irony was that Hayden had no idea she was already dead and buried in the slums. Our guy finally reaches her snow-covered cross and prepares to dig. He feels a twinge of guilt about disturbing the dead, but retrieving the Mark of the Bastard is the linchpin of his master plan. He brushes his hand against the freezing surface, and his blood runs cold when he realizes the dirt is already soft. The horrifying realization claws at our boy. Another player has already beaten him to the loot. Once, long before any of this, a devastating plague swept through the slums where Luna Moon lived. While the healthy residents fled for their lives, she stayed behind alone to nurse the dying. But working that close to the infected, it was only a matter of time before the combat medic caught the plague herself. In the end, her surviving patients were left to build this humble wooden cross in the snow. Back in the present, a shovel bites into the quiet snow. Our guy works the frozen earth, reflecting on the sheer tragedy of the medic's fate. Of all the places to hide after her breakup with Hayden, she had to choose a plague-ridden slum. But hey, her terrible luck is his gain. The deadly outbreak kept the area completely abandoned, right up until his shovel finally strikes the wooden coffin. But as he clears away the remaining snow, he finds the lid already ajar. A detail that doesn't surprise our guy in the slightest. Inside, Luna Moon's skeletal remains rest undisturbed, and just as he suspected, the commander's token is completely gone. The intro to the original walkthrough goes like this. A player retrieves that exact token from the tomb and presents it directly to Commander Hayden. To be recognized as his illegitimate child, the player has to hand over the one item he entrusted to Luna Moon, his own dog tags. But as our guy stares down at the skeleton's bare ribcage, the tags are nowhere to be found. Maybe another player must have beaten him here to swipe the loot. But instead of panicking over the stolen dog tags, our boy just smirks. Because there's a massive secret he deliberately left out of his infamous strategy guide. Those tags were nothing more than a decoy. Without a second thought, he reaches straight into the skeleton's mouth. He yanks out the real prize, a meteorite artifact known as the Moonstone Ring. He admits he would have settled for the basic quest item, but the thief forced his hand. The medic likely swallowed the ring whole just to keep it out of the hands of looters. Our guy offers a silent apology for disturbing her eternal rest and plotting to steal her identity. He promises that if this insane con actually works, he'll treat the commander like a genuine father. Above all else, he vows to stay alive. Suddenly, the artifact erupts in a blinding flash of blue light as a system notification pings. Our boy immediately panics, terrified the beacon of light will expose his position. A floating window chimes in the air. It grants him partial access and teases a mysterious perk. Our guy scans the screens and quickly notes that the global chat function is currently locked. Curiosity piqued, he taps confirm on the prompt for the all-zone clearer reward. The interface officially welcomes Dopamine Addict as the only player to ever beat the entire game. His reward is an absolutely broken mechanic, the ability to inherit his past titles. The system explains that titles earned in a safe zone carry their effects over to the next playthrough. This allows a player to easily manipulate NPCs to their advantage. Knowing he has to face Commander Hayden tomorrow, my guy strategically equips Luna Moon's friend. The realization hits him like a truck. If this perk is exclusive to him, every other player dragged into this world is starting from scratch. He stares at the silver band and wonders what kind of sick mastermind orchestrated this nightmare. A sudden chime interrupts his thoughts. The window announces that his newly equipped title effect has just found a target. Our guy looks around the empty graveyard in confusion. The alert only triggers when an affected NPC is nearby, but the only thing keeping him company is Luna Moon's skeleton. Deciding not to overthink the glitch, our guy just grabs his shovel and quickly buries the coffin. With the grave covered, his thoughts pivot to the unknown player who looted the dog tags. The comic cuts to the grand exterior of the commander's residence. Our guy marches up to the gates with the ruthless intention of eliminating the diligent imposter, but two armed guards block his path. He confidently bluffs his way forward, telling them he holds crucial information about the exact people His Excellency is looking for. The soldiers exchange a stunned look, completely caught off guard that the young master's prediction was actually right. They quickly gesture for the teen to follow them inside. The realization claws at our hero. This imposter hasn't just arrived, they have already established themselves in the stronghold. As he is escorted through the halls, he wonders why this rival player is actively waiting for others to show up. An unseen figure formally welcomes him. Our guy steps into the room and is immediately hit with a blunt question. Is he a player? His newly unlocked system instantly scans the red-haired boy, identifying him as Taejong and confirming his interface remains completely locked. A quick scan of the dark-haired teen pulls up the username SafeZone8, confirming his interface is just as locked, while the kid explains they can safely use Korean as a secret code. Unimpressed, our boy flatly tells him he already figured that out. Since the guy is freely sharing info, our hero figures he isn't an immediate threat. But he still demands to know why they're gathering players in the first place. SAFEZONE8 simply waves off the interrogation and insists they handle proper introductions first. The sudden pivot to pleasantries catches our guy completely off guard. The realization clicks into place. Since neither of them has unlocked the system yet, his own stats are completely invisible, handing him the perfect hidden advantage. Back then he easily bluffed his way through the snow by claiming the alias T. Baoram, and he prepares to pull the exact same trick right now. But before our hero can even open his mouth, the dark brown-haired boy steps forward to introduce himself first. With a confident smirk, the kid drops a single name, claiming to be the legendary Dopamine Addict, which just so happens to be our guy's actual username. Picking up right where we left off, our boy is utterly baffled by the imposter's introduction. The fake Dopamine Addict just smirks, convinced the shocked reaction means his stolen alias carries weight. He starts bragging about his supposed fame in the hardcore gaming community. He even strikes a smug pose to imitate the legendary player's old persona, which hits our hero with lethal levels of second-hand embarrassment. Unimpressed by the cringe, the fake Dopamine Addict flatly tells our guy to leave. But the imposter pulls out his leverage and dangles the stolen dog tag of the historical player Luna Moon. He acknowledges our guy's guts. Then he arrogantly offers him a spot working as his subordinate. The red-haired boy steps up, presented as living proof of this grand leadership. Our hero's eyes narrow as the pieces finally click into place. The logic maps out cleanly. The game's brutal environment naturally weeds out the weak before they can even attempt a strategy. That means anyone who survived this long has to be highly capable, and the imposter is actively trying to collect them as disposable pawns on his chessboard. He needs a loyal faction if he ever hopes to usurp Commander Hayden and take over the safe zone. So when the fake asks if he needs time to think, our boy flatly rejects the offer without a second of hesitation. Absolutely furious that some random fraud is hijacking his genius strategy, he demands the imposter call the commander in immediately. He boldly claims he'll testify on the guy's behalf to back up the illegitimate child story, just to get him out of the room. The fake takes the bait and steps out to fetch the warlord, which leaves our guy exactly where he wants to be. He immediately turns his attention to the red-haired boy left behind. He probes the kid to figure out why he's willingly playing sidekick to a total fraud. The boy casually reveals that they aren't actually working together. They just spawned in the exact same location from the very beginning. Our guy is honestly a little surprised by how cooperative the kid is being. Realizing the imposter started his identity theft ruse the second he woke up, our hero asks why the boy didn't just ditch him and enlist normally. With a heavy sigh, the redhead gloomily admits he already served his mandatory military time in his past life, and absolutely refuses to do it again. The dynamic is obvious. The imposter is just keeping this gentle giant around to use as a compliant meat shield. He asks if the kid resents Dopamine Addict for leaking the address that got them trapped here, but the redhead's answer catches him completely off guard. Clenching his fist, the boy admits his heart is practically beating out of his chest. Because he is a massive, borderline obsessive fanboy of the legendary streamer, he justifies following the imposter purely based on the guy's god-tier gaming reputation, leaving our hero deeply disturbed. The kid even seriously warns our hero to obey the imposter if he wants to survive the apocalypse. Our hero accepts that this guy is completely out of his mind and decides to ask one final question. He leans in to confirm if the kid's loyalty to Dopamine Addict is truly absolute. The redhead firmly swears that it is. A satisfied smile spreads across our guy's face as he accepts the fanboy as a useful ally. But before the confused kid can ask what that means, the heavy door violently bursts open. Commander Hayden Goodman storms into the room, demanding to see the person who claims to know him. Instantly, a system notification pings to confirm that his exclusive title is already working its magic on the man. A second message reveals that possessing the Moonstone Ring has completely doubled the effect. Our hero freezes the moment the warlord steps past him, spotting the crossed bottles emblem on the man's sleeve. Hayden suddenly drops to one knee, mesmerized by the teen's resemblance to a ghost from his past. The realization hits our boy that the title isn't just raising affection stats. It's projecting a literal illusion of Luna Moon. Standing in the background, the imposter watches in confusion as the heavy atmosphere shifts. He yells at our hero to hurry up and testify to his father, but our boy just ignores the noise and reaches into his pocket. Holding out the band on his palm, he calmly presents it as a keepsake from his mother. The commander stares at the jewelry in absolute shock. While the imposter scoffs at the old trinket, Hayden demands to know exactly what this means. The warlord slowly turns his back on our hero to confront the imposter about his bold claim to be his son. He coldly declares that his woman's jewelry is currently resting in someone else's hands. The imposter completely loses his mind, desperately claiming our guy stole the item from him. But Hayden's terrifying aura freezes the kid right in his tracks. The commander issues one final, lethal warning against pushing the lie any further. Watching from the sidelines, Taejong realizes this completely contradicts the forum's strategy guide. A sharp gasp escapes the imposter as the brutal reality of his situation finally sets in. Our hero just stares at him with dead eyes while the imposter asks our boy who he really is. Cornered and frantic, the fake screams back defensively and demands to know who he's dealing with. But a merciless system window pops up to seal his fate, confirming that player Safe Zone 8 has officially failed the strategy. In this world, the penalty for blowing a quest is immediate, absolute elimination. Without another word, the imposter drops dead on the floor like a puppet with cut strings. My guy is genuinely stunned when the interface pings again, transferring Luna Moon's dog tag straight into his inventory. The commander immediately barks for the servants to haul the lifeless body to the infirmary. But our boy is already doing the math. There is only one reason the game would hand over another user's loot. It registered this elimination as a successful player kill. The dark realization claws at him, making him wonder if failing a quest in here means actual permanent death back in reality. Before he can spiral too far down that rabbit hole, a pathetic sniffle breaks his train of thought. Taejong is backed against the wall in a full-blown panic attack over his idol dropping dead. Our guy tells the kid to breathe and flatly explains that the corpse on the floor was nothing but a cheap fake. He brings up Taejong's obsessive forum messages to call the kid out, mocking him for claiming to be a hardcore fan while completely missing the obvious. With a confident smirk, my guy finally drops the act and declares that he is the real Dopamine Addict. Still trembling from the shock, Taejong asks if he is actually looking at his gaming idol. Our boy flexes his newly unlocked system, pulling up the dead imposter's status window to prove he can read player data. To seal the deal, he casually drops Taejong's embarrassing username right to his face. Internally, our boy breathes a sigh of relief that his master plan hasn't completely derailed. The fanboy instantly drops to his knees to apologize profusely for ever doubting the legend. He leans in, practically vibrating with excitement, but our hero quickly shushes him. Hatham explains that keeping his true identity under wraps is crucial, since not every player in this death game is going to be a fan. He orders the redhead to stick to the script and call him by his character's name from now on. In exchange for absolute cooperation, my guy promises to keep him alive through the apocalypse. As a bonus, he even offers a way out of the brutal military draft, noting to himself just how easy this kid is to manipulate. The Cola Zone is relatively safe compared to the rest of the map, but scouting it in a 10-year-old's body is a huge handicap, so securing a few loyal allies is absolutely essential. Our boy clenches his fist, his focus already pivoting to a much bigger problem. The system reveals that the Moonstone Ring has triggered a brand new, overarching quest called The Secret of the Apocalypse. He already knew from his countless playthroughs that every single zone hides a unique meteorite item, but actually securing one has never once triggered a warning about the apocalypse before. He pieces together the exact timeline of his system unlocking. Collecting these hidden artifacts from the other zones must be the key to uncovering this massive secret. Staring at Taejong's back, my guy realizes his mission has evolved from simply surviving the end of the world to actively solving it. With a resigned smirk, he accepts that this new reality is proving far more complicated than the digital sandbox he mastered. He snaps back to the immediate issue, feeding the redhead a strict alibi for the commander. The order is to use the dead imposter as a scapegoat, and in return, he promises an introduction to another player once they clear the suspicion. The moment he drops Kush Potato's username, Taejong immediately recognizes the toxic forum hater from his unhinged online comments. Hatham warns the teen to play along with his bastard alias when they finally meet up, ensuring his cover stays perfectly intact. Hatham notices the hesitation and prompts the redhead to spit it out. Taejong points out a glaring issue. The real imposter using the bastard alias must have been dragged into this world too. Our boy is caught off guard, demanding to know how the teen could possibly confirm that. He remembers it clearly. After the store's location dropped online, every curious hardcore player flocked there to check it out. While browsing the aisles, Taejong bumped into a guy who proudly introduced himself as the infamous bastard. The imposter was literally buying a packaged knife at the register, explicitly bragging that he was going to attempt the brutal knife zone guide. Back in the present, Taejong shudders just thinking about the guy casually paying for his weapon. Hatham quickly puts the pieces together. The imposter is currently trapped in the deadliest starting area of the entire game. He feels a brief flash of pity for the terrible spawn point, but defensively reminds himself that he only ever shared the address with Home Protector. Shaking off the guilt, our hero asks how Taejong got pulled into the game if he wasn't attacked by the cashier. Taejong just stares back in total confusion. He simply walked out the front doors normally before waking up in this hellscape. This revelation completely shatters Hatham's assumption that physical trauma was a requirement for entry. He remembers it clearly. The mysterious cashier caved his skull in, leaving him to wonder why he was specifically targeted. Back in the present, our boy pushes the mystery aside and orders Taejong to play the clueless victim if anyone interrogates him. A sudden creak from the door interrupts the planning session. Kush Potato pokes his head inside to announce that Commander Hayden is summoning the young master. Hatham accepts the call without hesitation, fully aware that his next major strategy is about to begin. The comic cuts to a grand dining room, where the warlord sits alone at the head of a massive table. Hatham pulls out a chair, internally noting the heavy, intimidating aura radiating from the man. Hayden reveals he already sent Kush Potato away to ensure they could have a strictly private conversation. The eye patch-wearing commander leans forward, asking where the boy and Luna Moon have been hiding all these years while he scoured the frozen wastelands. Our hero calmly replies that his mother is located right behind the slums. Then he drops the absolute bombshell. Luna Moon is already dead and buried. Hayden's fist clenches hard against the table as the crushing news washes over him. Overcome with regret, the warlord vows to make up for all those lost years. He offers to make the boy his official successor, triggering the exact dialogue our guy has been waiting for. A system window pings to confirm the strategy is a complete success and unlocks the 3 rewards phase. But our hero knows this early victory is just a mere starting point on his climb to the top. The commander is weighing his worth on a massive scale, and our boy is fully aware that these next choices are a brutal test of his character. Hayden asks for his very first wish, and the gamer already has his answer locked and loaded. He looks up with wide, innocent eyes, and asks the man to visit his mother's grave as often as possible. Frequent trips to the slums will publicly cement his status as a treasured son, and indirectly boost his hidden successor score. Deeply moved by the selfless request, Hayden solemnly agrees to make the journey. The system logs the first choice, so our boy shifts his focus to plotting out his final 2 moves. Across the table, the commander silently observes his new son's small, heavily scarred hands. He suddenly breaks the silence, catching the little mastermind completely off guard. Hayden insists they dig in before diving any deeper into the heavy stuff. Our boy is genuinely surprised by the lavish spread of fresh produce and actual meat. The warlord apologizes for the rushed preparation, but Haytham politely assures him it is a feast. The young mastermind feels his plans finally stabilizing as he looks over the food. He lets out a breath and prepares to take a bite of the warm bread. But before the food even reaches his mouth, it simply dissolves into thin air. Haytham stares at his empty palm in pure bewilderment. His scarred hand drops to the table as the sudden glitch registers. Hayden suddenly shouts, his eye locked on the empty fingers, and our hero is left terrified that his game logic body just blew his entire cover. Couche Potato grabs our boy's hand, admitting he was totally zoned out. But as Couche Potato looks down, he points out the impossible. The stab wound has completely vanished. Haytham stares at his pristine skin in pure shock. He remembers it clearly. His hand was a mangled, bloody mess just moments ago. Back in the present, the realization hits him. The food didn't just glitch out of existence, it was instantly absorbed into his flesh. He realizes his existence in this world has been weird from the start. Back then, despite watching other survivors starve, he never felt a single pang of hunger. A system notification confirms the insane truth. Food here doesn't fill a stomach, it just restores HP. He remembers how the mechanics mapped out perfectly. Because his body operated entirely on game logic, he didn't need 3 square meals a day, and any injury he sustained could be instantly healed just by eating. Since this wasn't listed under his exclusive perks, our hero deduces it must be a baseline trait for all possessed players. Eager to test the limits of this mechanic, he calls a very confused Couche Potato over. Meanwhile, in the commander's office, an aide stresses over how to possibly explain the magically vanishing food. Hayden cuts him off before he can finish, declaring that no explanation is necessary. The warlord then drops a bombshell. Luna Moon possessed the exact same healing abilities. The man admits that over the years countless kids have shown up at his door to run this exact con. Every single one of them was easily dismissed as a cheap liar. But looking at Haytham, the hardened commander sincerely thanks the boy for finally finding his way home. Our hero just sits there in stunned silence to process this completely blind acceptance. Under his breath, he mutters that this level of trust is highly suspicious. As a veteran of the game, he knows for a fact that standard NPCs don't come equipped with instant healing mechanics. He remembers the clues snapping together into a staggering realization. The historical figure Luna Moon was actually a player. His cover might be safe, but this anomaly gives him a massive new mystery to investigate. He has to figure out exactly why the Moonstone Ring holds the secret of the apocalypse. He also needs to know if her supposed miracles were just the exact same game logic glitch he just experienced. Our guy considers just asking Hayden directly about how his fake mother used her abilities, but tipping his hand with weird questions would raise immediate red flags, so he decides to lock down his position first. Pivoting smoothly, he turns his attention back to the warlord. Hayden quietly gives him the floor. Haytham requests to host a monthly meal for the other children on the base, a move that instantly updates his system quest. He remembered how in his past playthrough, when the commander asked why, he had painted a tragic picture of starving kids freezing in the cold. He plays the role of a selfless little saint, claiming he just wants to share his newfound good fortune with the less fortunate. But internally, his real motive is pure calculation. Since only players absorb their meals into the void, watching a room full of recruits eat is the perfect way to identify hidden imposters. Back then, he realized it would also be a highly convenient way to keep Taejong and Couche Potato on a tight leash. Earning the blind loyalty of future child soldiers is just a nice little bonus. Of course, this master plan all hinges on Hayden actually agreeing to foot the bill. He remembered that this was a massive financial and political ask for a military leader. Still, he calmly sips his tea, fully confident he can force the man's hand. When Hayden hesitates, the kid deploys his secret weapon. He puts on his most pathetic, hollow-eyed expression and humbly offers to just survive on water. To really sell the tragedy, he casually mentions that back on the streets he used to eat snow because it was free. Hayden slowly sets his teacup down, absolutely appalled by the story. Then our hero drops the ultimate emotional nuke. He calls him Dad. That single word hits the hardened warlord like a physical lightning strike. Shattered by the guilt trip, Hayden immediately agrees, and a system ping confirms the second stage of the quest is clear. Hours later, the Grand Estate falls quiet. The warlord stands by the bed and gently tells the boy to get some sleep. Haytham politely wishes the commander a good night, but the warlord hesitates in the dim light, clearly wrestling with a heavy burden. Staring out at the full moon, Hayden acknowledges the elephant in the room. He knows the kid must have a ton of questions about his loveless marriage and his failure to protect Luna. He gently pats our hero's head and admits the boy is still way too young to handle the full ugly truth. The commander promises to explain everything when the time is right, but asks his son to share his own hidden secrets in return. Our boy stares up from the pillows and solemnly agrees to the pact. Satisfied with that answer, Hayden finally turns to leave, but his heavy boots stop right at the threshold. Without even turning around, the fearsome warlord awkwardly mumbles that the kid can keep calling him dad. The second the door clicks shut, my guy drops the innocent act entirely, marveling at how insanely overpowered the dad card actually is. He coldly resolves to milk that parental affection for all it's worth, to secure Hayden as the ultimate manager for his future survival shelter. Suddenly, a glaring blue system window shatters the quiet darkness with a massive alert. The global chat feature is now active. Our hero bolts upright in bed, absolutely floored by the realization that another player has officially unlocked the game system. The interface asks if he wants to join the public room, and he stares at the prompt, eager to test his theory that acquiring a meteorite item is the universal trigger. Without a second thought, he taps the button to enter. A crisp notification confirms that Dopamine Addict has joined the channel. But a split second later, a second name drops into the chat, and the sight of it instantly freezes the blood in Haytham's veins. The imposter, T. Balram, is the other player who just unlocked the system. He remembers the terrifying game lore. Based on Taejong's intel, that bastard is trapped in the knife zone, and the meteorite item he just found is the exact weapon needed to trigger a catastrophic genocide route. The game's lore paints the knife zone as a nightmare, a ruined city crawling with deranged psychopaths. It is a lawless wasteland where murderers flood the streets and the weak are hunted for sport. The clear condition is just as bloody: a mandate to exterminate all 1,000 residents. Haytham knows the objective sounds impossible, but there is actually a method to the madness. The zone's meteorite dagger is so overpowered that it lets a total newbie one-shot any enemy they face. But even armed with that weapon, our boy barely managed to survive the slaughterhouse back when he played the game. So the fact that this imposter, T. Balram, not only managed to stay alive in a hellhole like that, but actually secured the item and unlocked the system? A sudden ping in the chat proves this guy is no ordinary player. Our hero ponders how to approach the interrogation, weighing whether to ask about the meteorite item or the guy's overall progress. He decides to play it cool, and types back a casual confirmation that he is indeed Dopamine Addict. T. Balram's response is instantaneous, a blunt, chilling death threat. Haytham just stares at the glowing screen, completely baffled by the unprovoked hostility. The next morning brings a bitter chill to the estate. A servant abruptly pushes open the bedroom door to announce that Warden Mersault has summoned him. Our boy is slightly caught off guard by the sudden wake-up call. He masks the surprise and calmly asks for directions. Last night, Haytham tried to reason with the imposter to secure his help. He threw T. Balram a massive bone. He revealed the exclusive secret that consuming food instantly healed wounds. But the bastard remained stubbornly fixated on his grudge and swore to hunt him down. Haytham rationalized that the guy was probably going through absolute hell in the knife zone. Deciding the imposter needed a revenge quest just to stay alive, Haytham offered himself up as bait in the Cola zone. Back in the present, Haytham steps out onto the snowy training grounds. He spots Mersault waiting quietly for him by the archery targets. The gray-haired man introduces himself as Warden Mersault, and immediately makes it clear he doesn't buy the Secret Son routine. Our boy just brushes off the hostility, completely unfazed by the attitude. He knows exactly who he's dealing with. A guy so dangerously observant that Haytham usually just poisoned him in the game to save time. Unamused, Mersault steps closer and scolds the kid for his total lack of manners. He bluntly reminds my guy that the commander only has one lawful wife, meaning this newcomer is nothing more than an illegitimate bastard. The warden is exactly as abrasive as his NPC counterpart, but our hero decides to spare him this time. Years ago, Mersault was just an orphan and a former child soldier, highly capable but plagued by anxiety. Deep down, he secretly longed for the one thing he never had: a warm, traditional family. It was a quiet dream he thought he'd never actually achieve. Until one day, a stranger noticed his bleeding hand and offered him unexpected kindness. That woman was Daphne Goodman, the former commander's daughter. The young soldier was instantly captivated. He tried to convince himself his trembling heart was just reverence for her noble status. He buried those feelings deep, convinced he was entirely unworthy of the commander's daughter. Instead, the man threw himself into his military duties. He took up a post as her dedicated guard, silently protecting the woman from afar. But then a young Hayden entered the picture. The dark-haired man married Daphne and ultimately inherited the seat of commander. It wasn't until Mersault became his aide that the bitter truth came to light. Their union was completely loveless, forged purely out of political necessity. Furious on her behalf, the aide finally snapped. He confronted his superior directly to accuse Hayden of not actually loving his wife. The subordinate acknowledged the commander's competence, but demanded an immediate annulment. Hayden calmly deflected the outburst, finding the logic a little strange. The commander questioned why a rising military star cared more about a divorce than his own career. But then Hayden dropped the act and admitted the cold truth. He and Daphne didn't actually love each other. He confessed he was just biding his time, waiting for the day he could reunite with his real family. And he promised that the moment he passed on his title, Daphne would finally be free. Before the aide could process any of it, Hayden hit him with one pointed question. Back in the present, our boy opens his mouth, and he drops the exact same nuke, bluntly asking if the warden loves Daphne Goodman. Mersault physically stumbles back, completely paralyzed by the uncanny echo of his former commander. Haytham leans in and uses his fake status as an illegitimate child to claim he understands the man's pain. Feigning a desperate desire for a real family, my guy flawlessly manipulates the warden's deepest vulnerability. The gamer leaves the shattered aide behind and casually heads back inside the estate. He wonders for a split second if his soap opera acting was a bit too melodramatic. But given the sheer shock on Mersault's face, our boy knows he just secured a powerful ally. Suddenly, a system window flashes right in front of him. A massive wave of notifications floods his vision as multiple players unlock the system simultaneously. Haytham stares at the alerts in disbelief. He expected others to figure it out eventually, but all at the exact same time. Then, one specific username drops into the feed: Home Protector, the shadowy mastermind who leaked the convenience store address and triggered this mass possession. As the culprit casually greets him in the chat, our hero flashes a sinister smile, more than ready to welcome his true enemy. Our boy watches the system chat light up as the other possessed players finally realize they aren't alone. He reads through their naive coordination and notes how easily they trust a bunch of strangers. To him, their sheer cluelessness is almost refreshing. But the game's lore goes like this: once the second apocalypse kicks off, the lower difficulty zones will be the absolute first to fall. Players eventually have to abandon their safe havens and push into harder territories to survive. Human nature dictates otherwise. Most people just cling to the easy zones, locking themselves into a dead-end route. Haytham decides to gather some intel. He lies about starting in the cola zone and asks for everyone else's coordinates. The chat user God happily volunteers that they spawned in the love zone. Totus Possible chimes in right after to claim the beer zone. Our hero leans into the bit and plays the fool, joking that he thought the cocaine he bought was just flour. Then he casually drops a bombshell. He reveals that the imposter T. Bauram is trapped in the deadly knife zone, a fact that shocks the entire group. The chat window pings again as Home Protector announces they spawned in the cigarette zone, which our guy immediately flags as a cakewalk. A smirk crosses his face as a metaphorical manhunt unfolds. He silently prays the suspected mastermind survives long enough for a personal introduction. The topic pivots when Home Protector asks where the user Dentist ended up. Instead of answering, Dentist immediately pushes back and demands to know why anyone is trusting a random forum poster's intel. The skeptic questions why the real T. Bauram isn't speaking up for himself. Our hero raises an eyebrow at the paranoia. God quickly jumps to the defense, flaming the doubter for not recognizing the famous strategy guide author. Haytham analyzes the situation. Since cross-zone contact is currently impossible, this level of caution makes no sense. The mystery instantly unravels when Dentist asks what a safe zone even is. The chat completely derails as the veterans lose their minds over the rare sight of a genuine newbie. Our boy considers the clinic right next to the convenience store. This civilian must have just been caught in the crossfire by accident, and since they are somehow still breathing, he deduces they must be trapped in the easiest location, the candy zone. The veterans continue to playfully roast the confused newcomer. Armed with enough location data, our guy pivots to his real objective. He asks the group if anyone possesses a meteorite item, throwing out his theory that the space rocks are the universal key to the system. Messages immediately light up with confirmations. God reveals they own a pair of meteorite earrings. Home Protector chimes in about a meteorite pistol, and Totus Possible mentions touching the power source of a submarine. Even Don't Cry at Scardio proudly announces they lift a dumbbell forged from the space rock. Dentist adds to the pile with a story about a boss forcing them to touch a strange stone. The veterans collectively realize the connection. This flood of evidence sparks a massive realization for our boy. While some of these players own their respective items outright, others merely brushed past them, proving that simple physical contact is the exact trigger needed to activate the game system. Now that the mystery is solved, he drops one final question to the group. Has anyone actually encountered another player? The chat responses confirm his suspicion. Even though multiple players spawned in places like the chicken and love zones, only one representative from each is actually active in the chat. The brutal reality of the mechanic plays out. No matter how many people reach for the prize, only a single player per zone can unlock the system. That means there has to be a hidden secondary condition beyond just touching the meteorite. With the crest of the unicorn zone looming, he sets a long-term goal to figure out why it remains the only area completely locked out of the network. Satisfied with his detective work, our boy stretches out on his bed. He drops a quick farewell message and logs off, leaving the newbies to their clueless chatter. A few days later, the atmosphere is considerably less relaxed inside the executive meeting room. The scarred executive from the pro-Daphne faction kicks things off by demanding to know if they have located the child of the deserter. The pro-Hayden faction immediately bristles at the disrespect and defends Luna Moon as a hero of the subjugation battle. A fierce argument erupts across the table over whether a woman who never even stepped foot on a battlefield can truly be called a hero. A fist slams down hard onto the table and instantly kills the noise. Chief Anlon glares at the bickering men, sharply reprimanding them for raising their voices in the presence of Commander Hayden. The tension only thickens when Chief Anlon admits his own curiosity. He looks straight at the warlord and demands to know whether His Excellency considers the woman a deserter or a hero. Commander Hayden just sits calmly at the head of the long table. Instead of taking the bait, he smoothly defers the judgment to his son. Right on cue, the heavy double doors swing open. Our boy strolls in, and his passive tidal effect automatically pings the executives with system notifications as he walks past. His Excellency formally introduces him to the highest authority in the Cola Zone. The intense hostile glares from the pro-Daphne faction immediately lock onto the teen, but honestly, he's more impressed by the sheer weight of this grand entrance. Taking his place before the divided room, Haytham quickly analyzes the political minefield. He breaks the landscape down like a game lobby. Half the leadership is fiercely loyal to Daphne. The other half consists of hardened veterans who fought right alongside Luna Moon. If he calls his mother a deserter, the veterans who bled beside her will instantly turn their backs. But if he praises her as a hero, Daphne's loyalists will never accept a bastard child's legitimacy. Refusing to step into the trap, our guy speaks up and dismisses the debate entirely. He boldly declares that his mother's legacy is completely irrelevant, because his absolute authority comes directly from his father. That sheer audacity instantly strikes a nerve. The scarred executive leaps from his chair and furiously shouts down the teen's unknown origins. He orders the room to seize the brat, but a sudden gunshot interrupts the command and splatters fresh blood straight across Haytham's face. The hostile executive screams in agony as he clutches his newly shattered hand. Mersault lowers a smoking handgun, calmly stating he only intervened to protect the young master. Chillingly unfazed by the sudden violence, our hero just sighs and complains that the mess ruined the clothes his father gifted him. In the end, the bloody spectacle forces the executive meeting to an abrupt halt. As our boy walks away, the remaining officers whisper in horror about how he didn't even blink at a man dying right in front of him. Down the hall, Mersault admits to Commander Hayden that he knew the kid was clever, but never expected him to be quite so bold. The warlord requests a full assessment of his new son after tasking his aide with the teen's education. He remembers it clearly. Over the past few days, our hero completely exceeded every single expectation. The boy memorized their complex etiquette, the Goodman family history, and the entire military structure in the blink of an eye. He even paid careful attention to the delicate lore surrounding Lady Daphne. Back in the present, Mersault notes that while the kid's concentration and memory are astonishing, there is one detail that truly terrifies him. He remembers it clearly. At the shooting range, Haytham's lethal marksmanship was finally put to the test. The officer watched the display with his own eyes and still couldn't believe what he saw. My guy's stance, breathing, and icy composure were as flawless as a hardened veteran. Yet after drilling the target dead center, the teen casually turned and asked if he was holding the weapon right for his first time. Back in the present, our guy is secretly coasting on a deadly combo, his past life's mandatory military service stacked with his system-granted marksmanship skills. He remembers it clearly. The aide noted that anyone with basic training could at least hit a target, but the young master's precision was on a completely different level. In this brutal world, flawless shooting skills were the only way to protect a safe zone, because the towering beasts wouldn't die unless their cores were completely destroyed. Back in the present, Mersault formally recommends that Haytham is absolutely vital for the upcoming subjugation battle. A drop of sweat immediately rolls down his face as he realizes he just suggested sending the commander's own son into a deadly war zone. But Hayden doesn't snap, simply asking if the boy is truly that capable. The warlord silently considers the heavy recommendation. Meanwhile, outside in the snowy courtyard, the base is buzzing. Rumors are already spreading like wildfire about the bloody incident at the suspended meeting. As Mersault walks past, soldiers whisper about him gunning down Lieutenant General Badham, wondering if the aide will face draconian punishment for his blatant insubordination. But another soldier argues that Badham provoked the young master first. However, the most disturbing part of the rumor is something else entirely. He remembers it clearly. A man died right in front of Haytham, and all our boy cared about was his blood-splattered outfit. Back in the present, The guards conclude that whether he is a psychopath or a master manipulator, he is definitely not ordinary, especially with his sudden plan to dine with the child soldiers. Up in his room, Mersault finishes recounting these exact whispers to Hatham. The protagonist quietly watches the falling snow outside his window. He awkwardly admits that hearing it out loud makes him sound like a total psychopath. Mersault dryly points out that the executives were losing their minds while Hatham complained about laundry, but my guy quickly deflects to remind the aide who actually pulled the trigger. Stepping away from the glass, our hero decides to ask a serious question. He looks Mersault dead in the eye and accuses him of shooting Badam on purpose. The warden's aide subtly flinches at the direct confrontation. He adjusts his glasses and plays dumb, calmly asking what the young master means. But this guy confidently states that the answer is obvious. He remembers it clearly. Earlier today, Commander Hayden secretly wanted to butcher anyone who dared insult Luna Moon's legacy. Back in the present, he lays out the warlord's true motives. As the leader of the entire zone, his father has to maintain a strict facade of neutrality. That is, until his real son finally appeared, giving him the perfect excuse to tip the scales. The hostile executive became a bloody reminder that anyone who insults his boy will pay the price with their life. Hatham deduces that Hayden made a secret arrangement with Mersault beforehand, using the aide as a designated hitman if anyone stepped out of line. By framing the murder as sudden insubordination, the stunt successfully distracted the entire base from gossiping about the new illegitimate child. Mersault praises the flawless deduction, but he quickly points out his allegiance to Daphne Goodman's faction and asks why the boy trusts him so blindly. Hatham acknowledges that as Luna Moon's flesh and blood, he should be their biggest political enemy, but he leans in and reminds the aide of the promise they made. He remembers it clearly. A few days ago, he swore to become Commander Hayden's successor, and he vowed to use that power to finally set Lady Daphne free. He knew the aide's unrequited feelings for the woman were genuine, which made him the perfect pawn to trust. Back in the present, Mersault concedes the point and openly compliments our hero's sharp political sense. The officer awkwardly clears his throat, quickly changing the subject to the upcoming dinner with the child soldiers. Our boy is pleasantly surprised by the proactive interest as the aide asks if he has a specific strategy in mind. Thrilled to be winning the man over, Hatham reveals his plan is to actually cook the meal himself. Mersault immediately catches on, recognizing a home-cooked meal as a classic psychological tactic to win over the masses. The logic is simple. Forcing a bunch of grunts to obey a privileged superior will only breed resentment. He needs to prove he is genuinely down in the trenches with them. That way, when the true apocalypse finally drops, the squad will follow his every command without a second thought. Fully on board, Mersault asks how he can assist with this grand operation. He eagerly offers to help finalize the menu or start prepping the ingredients in the kitchen. But the aide is completely caught off guard when our boy drops a single word: hunting. With a confident smile, Hatham declares that their very first step is to go out and hunt their own ingredients. And so the two find themselves trudging through the freezing snow, and Mersault immediately regrets his life choices. He points out the sheer absurdity of wandering into a monster zone with only a single rifle between them. Our hero casually tells him to keep it down, acting like this is just a stroll in the park. Mersault insists his frustration stems from genuine concern, because if the young master gets even a single scratch, Commander Hayden would absolutely execute him on the spot. Hatham completely ignores the panic. He smoothly claims that a truly sincere banquet requires ingredients hunted by his own hands. The silver-haired teen sighs, unable to argue with the sentiment, but he angrily reminds the boy about his total lack of shooting experience, which means any fatal accidents will fall squarely on his own shoulders. Our boy shamelessly milks his status and boasts that as the commander's son, a little hunting is light work. He even teases the older teen to hide behind his back if he gets too scared. But internally, the gamer admits that hunting alone would have been much easier. The only reason he dragged this nag along is to secure a credible witness to his monster hunting skills. Up ahead, they spot a small antler rabbit frozen in the snow, but our hero completely dismisses the easy prey and leaves Mersault thoroughly confused. Without warning, Hatham pulls a knife and slashes his own palm. He strides forward to let his blood drip into the frost, ordering the panicked aide to keep his mouth shut. The gamer stares into the dark trees and announces that his true target has finally arrived. A massive cloven hoof suddenly crushes the snow. A towering hippo pig emerges from the tree line, leaving the silver-haired teen paralyzed with fear. Mersault frantically aims his rifle and warns that this beast must be a dangerous variant. A notification confirms that these creatures usually avoid strong opponents to stick to hunting small beasts. The aide realizes our boy used his own blood as bait, but questions why he didn't just shoot the rabbit to set a trap. Hatham calmly explains that the sharp scent of gunpowder would have sent the monster running for the hills. Raising his weapon, he orders Mersault to step back and let the beast charge its bleeding prey. A system window pings, activating his magic bullet marksman title just as the beast commits to the strike. The massive hippo pig drops from the sky in a lethal full-weight dive. My guy doesn't even flinch. He fearlessly aims his rifle straight up at the descending nightmare. A single shot cracks through the snowy forest, and Mersault watches the flawless execution in stunned silence. Lowering his smoking barrel, our boy casually checks the massive carcass to see if it'll be enough meat for his plan. A little later, the comic cuts back to the Grand Estate. The child soldiers stare in absolute awe at the feast laid out before them. Plates of perfectly cooked hippo pig meat line the wooden tables. Rocking a dark blue apron, Haytham plays the perfect host, cheerfully telling the hungry recruits to dig in. The kids immediately stuff their faces. Our hero's calculated plan to buy their loyalty with a hot meal is working perfectly. Meanwhile, manning the grills, Couche Potato bitterly complains that the NPCs actually get to taste the delicious food while players are stuck with game logic. Haytham casually critiques the blonde gamer's grilling technique just as Taejong strolls up to join the reunion. Taejong drops into a deep bow, enthusiastically greeting his two bosses. The redhead cheerfully introduces himself to Couche Potato, dropping his full ridiculous meme of a username and asking permission to call him the little boss. Couche Potato instantly loses it, furious that the redhead gets to dodge enlistment and skip the military uniform entirely. Our boy quickly shuts the tantrum down, pointing out that Taejong actually completed his mandatory military service back in the real world. Taejong laughs it off, assuming the blonde fanboy must at least know how to hold a gun since he's a fellow player, blissfully unaware that Couche Potato is completely clueless. Couche Potato nearly has a heart attack and furiously shushes him, terrified that the local NPCs might overhear the word player. Before they can completely blow their cover, our boy shuts down the bickering and calls the impromptu meeting to order, demanding a full progress report from Taejong. Taejong proudly reports that he's landed a job as a servant right here in the commander's mansion. Haytham asks if he's managed to overhear anything useful on the job. Taejong leans in to drop his massive bombshell. Lieutenant General Radu is having an affair, earning him dead silence from the other two. Our boy completely ignores the useless gossip and pivots to Couche Potato for any actual intel on the upcoming subjugation battle. Couche Potato actually delivers with a grim rumor: their unit might get drafted for the next major offensive. Our boy calculates that since the snow outside is still piled high, they have a decent chunk of time before the subjugation battle kicks off. He turns to Couche Potato and asks if the blonde fanboy managed to scavenge anything useful. Instead of answering directly, Couche Potato pulls out a mysterious ring dangling from a string and tells the other two to touch it. The sight instantly confirms our hero's working theory. There are definitely other players scattered across the game's remaining zones. Couche Potato wonders aloud where the infamous dopamine addict ended up, and Taejong sweats bullets while desperately trying to keep his boss's secret. Haytham decides to keep his identity under wraps for a bit longer, calculating that he needs to put these two firmly in his debt before dropping the big reveal. Completely oblivious, Couche Potato grumbles that the notorious gamer would never share information willingly anyway. Taejong quickly changes the subject to point out that since the rest of the base is eating normally, they have to be the only players in the cola zone. The group nods in agreement as the meat sizzles in the pan. But my guy isn't finished, and he prepares to drop a heavy theory on the table. He reveals his deduction that the legendary historical figure Luna Moon might have actually been a player herself. Meanwhile, Couche Potato sighs in disappointment, realizing the meteorite ring didn't trigger any special system effects for his teammates. Haytham finally drops the act and admits he recently unlocked the system, theorizing it requires physical contact with a specific item. Our boy pieces the puzzle together and drops a massive bombshell. The game strictly limits the unlock to one person per zone. Couche Potato immediately loses his mind, terrified that he is permanently locked out of the interface. Haytham tells the blonde to chill out, since the chat window is the only feature that actually matters anyway, and right now, he confirms there are exactly 8 active players in that global lobby. Taejong is absolutely floored by the theory. Our boy explains that his own physical resemblance to the historical figure serves as the first clue. He remembers it clearly. Mersault explicitly pointed out the uncanny similarity. Back in the present, he pictures the medic in his head, noting she was known as the hero of the subjugation battle. Couche Potato immediately recognizes the phrase as an exclusive player title, but Haytham saves the most decisive evidence for last. Back then, Commander Hayden mentioned that Luna Moon shared their exact same healing abilities. The memory fades, our hero flashes a terrifyingly excited smile and declares they've stumbled into a hidden hardcore raid. His teammates are thoroughly creeped out by his psychopathic enthusiasm. Ignoring their horror, the gamer casually digs into his pocket. He pulls out the Moonstone ring. In the original game, this was just a standard piece of loot, but in this reality, a system window confirms the item triggers an exclusive title effect that specifically targets NPCs. He remembers it clearly. Back in his sickbed, the stone radiated a comforting warmth whenever Commander Hayden sat nearby, and the second the warlord left the room, it turned ice cold. Back in the present, our boy pieces the logic together. If his equipped title only works on game characters, then this glowing meteorite ring must actually house an NPC's living ego. He stares at the gem, quietly wondering whose soul could possibly be trapped inside. Out on the balcony, the terrifying implications of a changed world start to set in for the rest of the squad. Taejong immediately hits the panic button, convinced that all their hard-earned game knowledge is now completely useless. Hatham calmly corrects him. The old strategies still work, but the penalty for failing a raid is now permanent death. Before the redhead can spiral further, Couche Potato interrupts with a much darker thought. If the legendary medic was actually a real player, that means someone else possessed a character in this hellscape long before they ever arrived. The sheer weight of these unknown variables drops onto Taejong like a ton of imaginary bricks. Taejong practically begs them to drop the ancient lore and just focus on surviving the immediate apocalypse. Hatham agrees, laying out their next move: enlisting in the upcoming subjugation battle. Just surviving the first raid grants a highly valuable title, so participation is non-negotiable. While Couche Potato eagerly volunteers for the front lines, Taejong tries to back out, prompting our guy to make a quiet calculation. He decides to bench the red-haired teen entirely as a contingency plan. If the raid goes completely south, they will need at least one player left behind to clean up the mess. Once they relocate the meeting to his private quarters, Taejong questions why they needed so much secrecy. Instead of answering, Hatham casually picks up a metal fork. His teammates stare in confusion at the cutlery placed next to a tray of pastries. Our hero orders them to sit, announcing that it is officially time for eating practice. He explains that consciously focusing on the act of eating drastically speeds up their game logic recovery rate. To demonstrate, the absolute psychopath violently drives the metal prong straight through his own hand. He casually lifts his bleeding hand to show off the fresh wound required to properly test his theory. Taejong and Couche Potato stare in trembling horror as the sheer sociopathy of their leader fully registers. Completely unfazed, my guy just closes his eyes and takes a calm bite of a cookie. Instantly, the gruesome puncture wound glows bright blue and knits itself perfectly back together. A quick cutaway shows the snowy exterior as he suggests they spend the days before the subjugation battle mastering this basic survival mechanic. Channeling his inner jigsaw, our hero slides the cutlery over and orders his teammates to start stabbing themselves. Couche Potato furiously refuses to participate in this psychotic training exercise, claiming he already mastered his recovery skills. To prove it, the blonde teen reaches straight for the tray of pastries. The cookie suddenly glows and dissolves directly into his palm. Taejong is absolutely amazed and immediately asks how he figured out such a convenient trick. Years ago, Couche Potato was bedridden with a debilitating illness, spending more time hooked up to medical equipment than actually eating. He simply recalled that familiar sensation of an IV drip to bypass the need to chew entirely. That was then. Couche Potato smugly boasts that his efficiency is unmatched, since he can heal broken bones just by laying a finger on a snack. Hatham is genuinely impressed. He pictures his friend as a holy cleric who desperately force-feeds the team to keep them alive in combat. The blonde teen immediately regrets showing off as a deep sense of dread washes over him. Taking a bite of a cookie, our boy officially dubs him the squad's dedicated healer. Later that night, the moon rises quietly over the commander's estate. The protagonist sits alone in the dark, thoroughly satisfied with the day's discoveries. He briefly ponders what kind of hellish training to put Taejong through before a system chime breaks the silence. A barrage of friend requests from the other players absolutely floods his interface. Knowing that accepting an invite opens a private chat, my guy casually taps the earliest notification. Home Protector instantly fires off a message to ask what took so long. Hatham coldly demands his business, completely ignoring the user's frantic apologies about the convenience store incident. The silhouette figure immediately asks if our boy is heading to the Unicorn Zone next. Before Hatham can even type a reply, a brand new system window pops up with an item trade request for a pack of cigarettes. He hits accept without hesitation, thrilled to confirm that the friend feature enables cross-zone item transfers right into his inventory. Home Protector shamelessly admits the gift is a bribe to secure a spot in his future shelter. Hatham knows that building a solid crew inside his current zone is vital, but securing a cowardly external ally with deep pockets is just as valuable, so he shoots back a tentative agreement. A satisfied smirk crosses his face as he decides to study the trade mechanics a bit more before bed. Suddenly, another notification chime cuts through the quiet room. He glances back at the glowing interface, figuring it is just his new sponsor rambling again. But his blood instantly runs cold. The prompt is a direct friend request from the psychotic knife zone imposter T. Bowram. Without a second thought, our boy accepts the psychotic imposter's friend request and immediately shoots him a private message. Miles away in a dark blood-soaked pit, a battered T. Bowram glares at his system screen and swears to murder Hatham before his own time runs out. T. Bowram remembers the real world, months before anyone got dragged into this mess. Before the transmigration, the man we know as the imposter was just a retired national athlete. Desperate for a way to cure his post-retirement boredom, he listened to a junior colleague who suggested a trendy new hardcore survival game. He even took the guy's advice for a flashy username and typed T. Bowram into the character creator. Unlike his dull everyday routine, the brutal post-apocalyptic game felt utterly alive. He quickly became engrossed in the punishing mechanics and the chaotic cross-zone fighting of the second apocalypse. At first, the constant barrage of game over screens absolutely infuriated him, but out of pure stubborn spite he refused to walk away. He successfully cleared the candy, cola, cigarette, beer, and chicken zones, finding his own twisted sense of fun in the grueling challenge. The real problem only started when he reached the cocaine zone and ran into the game's brutal AI learning mechanic. Because the game used AI trained on top player data to populate its later stages, the endgame zones were dominated by specific profiles, and T. Bowram found himself getting repeatedly curb-stomped by the AI clone of a player named Dopamine Addict. Learning that this guy's strategies were the absolute meta only dumped gas on his frustration. He swore to find a way to hit the bastard where it hurt. His opportunity finally dropped when Dopamine Addict posted a brand new walkthrough for the notoriously brutal knife zone. T. Bowram was genuinely floored that the lunatic had already cleared it, but he knew he had to move faster than the rest of the player base. His master plan was simple. If he beat the knife zone second, his own AI data would be matched against Dopamine Addict to secure some indirect revenge. Swallowing his pride, he spent the entire night grinding through his rival's tedious survival guide. But the moment he finally unlocked the zone, he discovered that Dopamine Addict had completely vanished from the internet. The only breadcrumb left behind was a single photo of a convenience store. Realizing that every user who visited that address had gone radio silent, T. Bowram decided to investigate the place himself. He stepped through the sliding doors and was surprised to find another customer already browsing the aisles. T. Bowram immediately recognized the freckled kid as one of Dopamine Addict's most dedicated forum followers. The teenager realized right away that he was looking at a former national athlete, prompting T. Bowram to casually ask if he played Safe Zone. The kid confirmed his username was indeed Taejongtae's Beyonce. Trusting his gut, the retired athlete grabbed a utility knife from the shelf to prepare for the worst. But the masked cashier with glowing pink eyes locked onto him, warning T. Bowram to think his purchase through carefully. When he insisted on paying, the clerk sinisterly slid the weapon over for free, noting he was the very first customer to choose it. T. Bowram turned his back on the bizarre employee, wondering where the missing gamers could have possibly disappeared to. Behind him, the cashier just glared menacingly. A split second later, his foot froze mid-step. A blinding flash of light swallowed him whole before he could even react. That was his last memory of reality. He remembers it clearly. He woke up trapped in the frail body of a 10-year-old child. Worse, the system had dropped him straight into the knife zone, leaving him surrounded by a pack of cannibalistic murderers. Recalling Dopamine Addict's psychotic walkthrough, the imposter knew the zone boss had a taste for young meat. His only play was to fake his death and steal the meteorite knife. He buried himself among the corpses in a thick pool of blood, executing the twisted strategy to the letter. The gamble actually paid off. He snatched the blade between his teeth and made a desperate run for it. But the brutal injuries he took during the escape were just too severe. Because this game's logic required food to heal, T. Bowram was doomed. The only meat in this hellhole was human, and he flat out refused to become a cannibal. Defeated, he fired off a message to Dopamine Addict, bitterly admitting he wouldn't be able to come kill him after all. Slumped against a filthy wall and bleeding out, he waited in the dark to see how his rival would react. Just as the cold grip of death started closing in, a system chime shattered the silence. Incredibly, our guy had sent him a trade request with a lifeline of 15 cookies. Our hero mocked the imposter for dying before even enjoying the game. In response, T. Bowram swore on his life that he would survive and hunt him down. The athlete fired back that our boy's twisted walkthrough was impossible to finish before the second apocalypse dropped anyway. To his complete shock, the gamer casually admitted the guide was just a stunt to earn a title, and physically impossible to pull off in a 10-year-old body. Our hero even had the nerve to tease him for secretly studying it so hard, and the bleeding boy could only blush with rage. Back in the present, Hatham smiles fondly as T. Bowram's newest message calls him the worst human being alive. He rests his chin on his hand, genuinely relieved that his old rival still has the fighting spirit to survive. Because my guy has a calculating, ulterior motive. He needs the imposter to stay breathing long enough to bring him something highly valuable. Meanwhile, the comic cuts to a moonlit mountain range and introduces a brand new area, the The Love Zone. A mysterious woman in a white dress stands in a clearing before a trio of hooded cultists. One of the followers reverently asks Manson for a divine message. She steps forward and tells them that God gave someone a revelation, but they chose to ignore it. She declares that Lord Dopamine Addict will not be coming to help them, even as a system window ironically displays her alignment as perfectly good. But a quick sideways glance reveals her mind is racing with hidden motives. The hooded followers start to panic. They realize our guy has completely ignored their friend request and might just leave them to rot. Manson just smiles, fully aware that the legendary player is actually at a massive disadvantage. If our boy had spawned in his home base, the Unicorn Zone, they wouldn't stand a chance. But right now, he's stuck in the Cola Zone. Here in the Love Zone, she can push her own unique abilities to their maximum potential. She was nothing but a fraudulent shaman who never received a divine calling. But she knows exactly how to manipulate people's hearts, which is perfect, since the clear condition for her territory is literally love. By sheer luck, she acquired the meteorite item first and unlocked the game system, passing off the status windows as divine revelations to keep the other players on a tight leash. She silences her panicked flock to proudly assert that even without Dopamine Addict, she is the one who hears the voice of God. She commands them to spread a new prophecy among the locals. In 10 years, a divine messenger will descend to punish all non-believers. She knows players holding meteorite items will be hunted, so she spins their current struggles as a holy trial. Once the second apocalypse kicks off a decade from now, she preaches, their so-called mad cult will be totally vindicated. Manson flashes a sinister smile and declares that everyone in the Love Zone will bow at her feet, laying down a direct challenge to our hero's dominance in this deadly game. We pick right back up with Hatham and Taejong pushing their limits in a grueling courtyard sprint. Between breaths, our boy casually asks if the redhead was an athlete in his past life. Hatham tosses over a water bottle for Taejong to catch. The redhead admits he used to be a pro, but insists his big bro is far more impressive. He assumes the kid must have had some hardcore prior training, maybe in marksmanship. Hatham bluntly shuts that down and claims he was a complete layabout. Naturally, this only deepens Taejong's blind admiration. He is fully convinced his idol is just a natural-born genius. Our hero rewards this shameless glazing by ordering him to run 20 more laps around the dirt. But internally, Hatham knows the cold truth. System titles don't grant an ounce of raw physical strength. If he doesn't put in the actual sweat equity, he's still trapped in the weak, easily exhausted body of a 10-year-old kid. He pulls up his massive list of inherited titles, noting that they only boost NPC affinity or specific skill proficiencies. A few days ago, he learned the hard way that they had absolutely zero impact on his actual physical capabilities. So how did he manage to pull off that perfect veteran-level shot out in the snow? A notification window reveals the answer. He relies entirely on the broken Magic Bullet Marksman title to cheat the system. When equipped, the perk guarantees that the first 6 rounds fired from any gun will never miss their mark. It grants an absolute, reality-bending level of accuracy. But there is a brutal catch. The 7th bullet carries a curse that unconditionally strikes the person most precious to the user. The terrifying implications of that fine print suddenly crash down on Hatham. He quickly tallies his recent shots, 3 at the practice target and 1 at the hippo pig. That leaves our boy with exactly 2 safe bullets before the cursed 7th round inevitably seeks out Commander Hayden, the man holding his highest affinity. He bitterly recalls Mersault forcing him to take those extra practice shots, realizing the silver-haired aide nearly got the commander killed. Taejong interrupts his dark thoughts to loudly ask why he is spacing out. Our hero tries to play it off, but the red-haired boy immediately calls his bluff. Shifting gears, the former athlete enthusiastically suggests interval training to maximize their physical efficiency. He casually mentions wishing he could manage Hatham's diet as well, a stray comment that sparks a massive realization. My guy excitedly cuts him off mid-sentence, leaving Taejong completely confused. The system logic clicks into place. Since his body operates like a literal game avatar, scarfing down food is a direct shortcut to refilling his stamina bar. Cut to the library, where Mersault stares blankly from his desk, completely baffled by the boy's sudden demand for military rations. Our hero flashes an innocent smile, using his strict confinement as the perfect excuse to sample the local MREs out of sheer boredom. In reality, his morning taste tests already prove that highly compressed, calorie-dense items like jerky offer a massive recovery boost over plain snacks. He presses the silver-haired aide for the most compact food available, boldly adding that he doesn't even care if the stuff is expired. The gamer is just itching to push the absolute limits of his flesh and blood inventory system, to see exactly what registers as consumable. Mersault lets out a tired scoff at the bizarre request, but before he can shut the idea down, the heavy library door suddenly creaks open. Deciding it's easier to just humor the kid, the aide invites Hatham to tag along to the research lab since he has his own business to handle there anyway. My guy readily agrees, more than happy to follow along if it means getting his hands on some military-grade grub. The pair arrives at the Zone's Security Research Lab, a specialized facility dedicated entirely to developing non-lethal military supplies and uniforms. Once inside, the staff presents the young master with a fresh tray of dried monster meat to sample. He stares down at the bulky, unappetizing slab of dried monster meat. Taking a bite, he immediately regrets his life choices. A phantom image of a soldier holding a torn boot flashes as our hero deadpans that it tastes exactly like a combat boot that hasn't been cleaned in years. Mersault eyes him suspiciously over the oddly specific comparison, and the boy internally sweats as he realizes he just recited the game's exact flavor text. Their tasting session is abruptly interrupted by an anxious voice at the door. The lab director rushes inside, clutching a stack of papers, and absolutely thrilled that the young master is showing an interest in his work. The bald older man launches into a passionate, borderline frantic speech about the looming threat of another food crisis. He dramatically throws his notes into the air in frustration over sluggish research progress, a quirk Mersault quietly attributes to apocalypse trauma. Haytham crouches down to help gather the scattered pages, smoothly validating the old man's fears. The kid puts on his best innocent smile, and claims it has always been his dream to ensure no one ever starves again. The director is deeply moved, completely misinterpreting Haytham's previous stunt of feeding the child soldiers as part of this noble crusade. With his target fully hooked, Haytham finally reveals his true request. He needs the lab to develop highly compressed, lightweight rations for the upcoming subjugation missions. The lab director notes that while they possess top-tier freeze-drying technology, no one has ever requested an upgrade to the standard combat fare. Fired up by the kid's supposed altruism, he confidently accepts the challenge. Our boy smiles in deep satisfaction. He just successfully conned the facility into producing the extreme stamina recovery items he desperately needs. But the moment they step outside, Mersault cuts right through the bullshit and asks what his actual endgame is. The silver-haired aide casually mentions the secret meeting with Taejong, proving he knows exactly what the young master has been up to. Haytham realizes Mersault has been actively planting watchers around him this entire time. Yet instead of a threat, the man offers a surprisingly candid confession. He admits that while he considers almost everyone else a complete idiot, he genuinely believes this 10-year-old will one day outrank him. Our hero is momentarily stunned by the unexpected praise. He internally mocks the aide for the sudden flattery, all while playing perfectly dumb to the accusation of brown-nosing. Their banter is abruptly cut short at a security checkpoint. The brown-haired guard strictly enforces the protocol. He insists on a full physical search to prevent any research materials from walking out the door. Haytham is caught completely off guard by the sudden demand for a pat-down. But as he gets a good look at the guy, a bloody image flashes in his head. This is the son of the recently deceased Lieutenant General Badam. Mersault smoothly steps in to offer his polite condolences, and the grieving guard waives the inspection entirely. As they head outside, the aide confirms the guard's identity. He points out the tragic irony that the guard is shedding tears for a father who abandoned him the moment he was born. Then Mersault expresses a rather chilling sense of relief. The aide casually reveals that Commander Hayden gave him secret orders to execute the guard on the spot if he showed even a hint of a grudge against our boy. This ruthless level of protection makes Haytham realize exactly why everyone in the base has been actively dodging him since the executive meeting. To separate his allies from his enemies, he needs to figure out exactly where the remaining shadowy executives stand, if the old men want to keep hiding behind closed doors. Our hero flashes a menacing smile, deciding it's time to pay them a home visit. Meanwhile, in the officer conference room, the top brass are already sweating over his recent stunts. In the snowy field, the pro-Daphne faction was still reeling from the massive hippo pig the 10-year-old dragged into camp. They suspect Commander Hayden orchestrated the whole hunt just to make his son look like a prodigy. Back then, others weren't so sure, noting how Warden Mersault shadowed the boy's every move. They shudder as they recall Haytham's chilling lack of reaction when an executive was murdered right in front of him. Chief Anlon, head of the pro-Daphne faction, cuts to the chase. Our boy is a direct threat to Lady Daphne's position. When asked if Daphne herself has weighed in on the crisis, Anlon admits she remains completely silent. The officers assume she is just biding her time and carefully plotting her counterattack. It started the day Haytham actively bribed the child soldiers with food to build his own private army, a clear sign he wasn't just buttering up his father's supporters. Back in the present, Anlon refuses to believe this is merely the innocent behavior of a child desperate for validation. The kid is clearly a scheming mastermind plotting a grand takeover. Suddenly, the conference room door creaks open. Barging into the conference room, the pro-Hayden faction catches their rivals completely off guard. The interlopers immediately accuse Chief Anlon's group of holding a secret meeting behind their backs. Smoothly deflecting the heat, The gray-haired general claims they were merely praising our boy's extraordinary hunting skills. A green-haired executive pulls out a chair to join the table and happily plays along with the flimsy excuse. He casually suggests that with skills like that, the kid should absolutely join them on the upcoming subjugation mission. Anlon's eyes narrow as he instantly sees right through the thinly veiled assassination plot. Firmly declaring that putting a child on the front lines is madness, the chief silently vows to shut this scheme down before it starts. Within seconds, the room erupts into a massive screaming match as the two factions hurl insults across the table. But the political shouting match is abruptly cut short when a panicked soldier bursts through the doors. The guard screams that young Master Hatham just scaled the wall and broke into Lady Daphne's private quarters. Hatham remembers it clearly. He sat alone on his bed and formulated a calculated solution to a very annoying logistical problem. The math is simple. Since tracking the officers down individually is a massive chore, my guy decides to poke the ultimate hornet's nest to aggro them all into the exact same room. Since all his formal meeting requests were rejected, he simply scaled the estate wall and terrified a poor maid in the courtyard. Our boy casually strolled through the grand halls and completely ignored the shocked staff. That is, until a cold voice finally addressed the commotion. Daphne Goodman herself stood at the top of the grand staircase and demanded an explanation for the intrusion. But as Hatham looked up, a familiar system window suddenly pinged into existence right over her head. He completely froze, his brain short-circuited as the realization hit him. This supposed NPC was actually a player. He read her ridiculous username and a clear route he had never heard of in his entire life. A merry bad ending with Hayden. Since she didn't react to his own stats, my guy deduced she was running an older, incompatible version of the game. Daphne asked why he was staring at her so intensely, and he quickly apologized. He smoothly claimed it was a habit inherited from his mother, Luna Moon, a name that made Daphne visibly flinch. Hatham used the opening to request a private audience so he could deliver his mother's final words. The maids were absolutely scandalized by his audacity and immediately demanded he leave the premises. But Daphne just raised a hand and ordered her staff to clear the room. The heavy doors clicked shut to trap the two of them in a tense silence. A fresh cup of tea was slid across the table. Daphne got straight to the point, asking what message Luna Moon could possibly have left for her. Hatham carefully studied her face. Unlike her hostile political faction, she didn't seem angry at all. Her white-knuckled grip on her dress screamed of deep unresolved guilt. He pieced together the tragic lore. Hayden's true love was always Luna, and Daphne had spent years feeling awful for taking her place. Deciding to test the waters, he deliberately trailed off his sentence and watched her flinch at the mere mention of his mother. He dropped a calculated lie, claiming that Luna had completely forgiven her. Daphne instantly called his bluff. Her guilt finally overflowed as she insisted his mother would never let her off the hook so easily. Breaking down, she confessed that even if it was all just to clear the route, she still stole the man Luna loved. That highly specific gamer terminology hit our boy like a freight train. The ultimate truth finally clicked into place. His mother, Luna Moon, was also a player. Back in the present, Hatham decides he is done playing games and goes straight for the real intel. He leans in close, claiming his mother left a secret passcode just in case she refused to believe him. With a deadpan expression, he drops her highly embarrassing username, Mersalt's wife. Daphne's face explodes into a furious blush and she frantically begs him to stop. She promises to spill everything, while our hero silently judges her middle school naming sense. Staring down at her teacup, she takes a shaky breath. She confesses the ultimate truth. Neither she nor Luna Moon are from this world, and they both woke up possessing characters inside a video game. Hatham pretends to sip his tea, faking complete shock while internally patting himself on the back for a perfect deduction. Now he just needs to figure out exactly which version of the Safe Zone franchise she comes from. The series boasts a massive real-world history, having evolved from retro pixel games all the way to modern online titles. He knows his knowledge comes from the absolute latest, most brutal iteration of the game. If Daphne played an older release, countless other players could be scattered across the world from entirely different eras of the franchise. When he asks her which specific title she was playing, she turns bright red again, muttering that he probably wouldn't know it. Hatham is genuinely confused as to why anyone would be this ashamed to talk about a hardcore survival simulator. To force her hand, he lays on a heavy guilt trip, dramatically coughing and pretending to be heartbroken that he'll never know his mother's true origins. The fake sorrow is too much for Daphne to bear, and she quietly stammers out the first letter of the genre. A second later, she blurts out the jaw-dropping truth. She transmigrated while playing a DILF dating sim. The sheer absurdity of the confession causes our boy's brain to completely blue screen. Meanwhile, the comic cuts to the panicked executives, who remain entirely unaware that they are currently starring in a sparkly romance game. Daphne gets completely serious and promises Hatham a full explanation. Her story goes like this. She used to play a game called Middle-Aged Handsome Men Dating Sim. It was a romance title set in an apocalyptic military base, with a cast of rugged older men. Back then in her past life she played it obsessively, and fell deeply in love with one specific character. But there was a tragic catch. He was an uncapturable extra. In one memorable scene, she offered the man her handkerchief. The dirt-smudged soldier politely declined. She insisted anyway, entirely smitten by his stoic demeanor. Haytham pieces the clues together. Daphne confirms his suspicion. Her favorite character, the man she loved, was none other than Mersault. Our guy asks the obvious question. If she loved Mersault, why did she marry Commander Hayden? Daphne looks down. She quietly admits she had no choice. When she first woke up in this universe, a glowing system window greeted her with a brutal ultimatum. Marry an NPC within 1 year or die. At the time, the dating sim's only available capture targets were the previous commander and a younger Hayden. And since she had unfortunately possessed such a doomed extra's body, that man with the eye patch was literally her only ticket to survival. All the puzzle pieces finally snapped together for our boy. Daphne's game and his hardcore survival nightmare share the exact same world and cast, just filtered through entirely different genres. He always assumed he just got dumped into a random digital sandbox. But what if this place is a real, breathing universe, and someone modeled the games after it? It's just a working theory, but it points to one chilling conclusion. Whoever dragged them here isn't some benevolent god. It's a sadistic, psychopathic viewer who treats their trauma as premium entertainment. Haytham silently vows to hunt down the bastard responsible, as Daphne quietly thanks him for hearing her out. She confesses that even though she survived the death quest, the guilt is eating her alive. Her selfish desire to stay near Mersault has ruined the lives of everyone around her. Back then, she was so desperate to avoid marrying Hayden that she begged for help and risked her own life to escape. But the very next day, Luna Moon vanished without a trace. She finishes the story, emphasizing that she was left completely alone to face her grim fate. That is exactly why she can't easily believe Luna has actually forgiven her. Our guy silently agrees, he wouldn't forgive her either. But as he takes a sip of his tea, something about her tragic tale doesn't add up. If Daphne had already told Luna she wasn't going to marry the commander, why did she leave? Luna could have just stayed and married him herself. Unless Daphne is lying through her teeth. She has survived in this cutthroat organization for a decade, and she could have easily manipulated the factions to drive her rival away. But as Haytham sets his teacup down, he decides the truth doesn't actually matter. Instead, our boy just looks her dead in the eye and asks why. That highly embarrassing username proves her feelings for Mersault are completely genuine, which means as long as Haytham keeps Daphne on a tight leash, she won't dare make a move against him. Having figured out exactly how to use her, the gamer drops the act and addresses her formally. He flat out offers to secure a divorce from his father. The silver-haired woman is completely blindsided by the sudden proposition. My guy flashes a manipulative smirk, adding that his help comes with one major condition. Desperate for her freedom, Daphne eagerly swallows the bait and asks for her first quest. Leaving her quarters, Haytham strolls down the hallway as his master plan falls perfectly into place. With Daphne officially on his side, forcing the separation will be a breeze using his final uncashed reward from the warlord. The pro-Daphne faction is going to completely lose their minds over the news. He remembers it clearly. Just a few days ago, the commander patted his head and promised to reveal everything if the boy took his side. But our guy knows he has to tread carefully and maintain his flawless persona as Luna Moon's tragic child, at least until he has this entire stronghold wrapped around his little finger. His grand scheming is suddenly cut short when Couche Potato screams his name in a total panic. Haytham turns around, completely baffled by the interruption. The bespectacled fanboy stammers out a bizarre question, asking if the approaching man counts as one of the game's handsome middle-aged targets. Chief Anlon, a leading executive of the pro-Daphne faction, marches down the hall looking absolutely furious. The angry older man jabs an accusing finger and demands to know why the boy dared to expel the maids from Lady Daphne's private quarters. He barks for an explanation to justify the blatant disrespect, while our hero simply notes how red the guy's face is getting. Haytham flashes a calm smile and decides to give the executive exactly what he wants. He loudly announces to the entire corridor that he just swore on his mother's name to secure a divorce for the commander and his wife. The surrounding soldiers and Couche Potato immediately gasp in stunned disbelief. Chief Anlon aggressively steps forward and roars that there will be hell to pay if the warlord ever catches wind of this stunt. But right on cue, Commander Hayden steps out of the shadows and asks exactly what it is he isn't supposed to know about. The warlord glares down at his supposed son, demanding a damn good explanation for the stunt he just pulled in Daphne's quarters. Our guy smoothly plays it off. He claims he merely had a polite little chat with his stepmother. He insists he did absolutely nothing wrong, and that Daphne was kind enough to forgive his unannounced visit anyway. But Hayden turns his back. His voice drops to a dangerous register as he immediately corrects that naive assumption. The commander states unequivocally that absolutely everything happening within his territory requires his explicit permission. Clenching his fist, the warlord warns that acting without his say-so is a massive problem, regardless of who forgives him. Mersault sweats bullets in the background, terrified of the impending wrath, while our hero quietly processes the reprimand. Outwardly, the boy bows in total submission. Internally, his gamer brain twists the rule to his advantage. He just needs to secure permission before triggering his next disaster. Playing the role of the dutiful heir, he respectfully calls Hayden his father and asks to be excused. The warlord's stern expression softens just a fraction as he waves the boy off. Outside, the sun sets over the snow-covered estate to cap off a truly chaotic day. As they walk down the sunlit hallway, Mersault immediately scolds my guy, completely horrified that he risked the commander's lethal wrath over Daphne. But our boy just brushes off the lecture and pivots the conversation right back to his stepmother. Flashing a smug smirk, he drops the absolute bombshell that Daphne actually wants a divorce. Mersault freezes in utter disbelief, completely stunned when the kid casually adds that he promised to help her pull it off. Stopping in his tracks, our hero prepares to deliver the final fatal blow to the aide's composure. He casually mentions that Daphne is already looking for a remarriage partner. The silver-haired teen instantly spirals into a state of pure comedic shock. The aide stammers, realizing this explains why Daphne recently asked him to find her a good match. Haytham watches the aide's panic, highly amused that both Mersault and Daphne are completely oblivious to their mutual feelings. His internal matchmaking schemes are cut short when Mersault suddenly calls his name. Blushing furiously, the older boy earnestly asks what he needs to do to become a candidate for Daphne's next husband. My guy just stares back with a deadpan expression, totally exasperated by the complete lack of subtlety. He advises the aide to start by treating him well and hiding his painfully obvious crush. Keeping this secret is going to be an absolute nightmare. Days pass, and the thick snow piled up around the estate finally begins to melt. This seasonal shift signals the imminent start of the highly anticipated subjugation battle. The entire base erupts into a frenzy of preparation as cadets undergo medical checks and gear up for war. Eager to join the fray and level up, Haytham marches into Commander Hayden's office to secure his spot on the front lines. But our boy is immediately hit with a massive roadblock. Hayden flat out denies the request and strictly forbids him from stepping foot outside to hunt. The rejection completely throws Haytham off. He cannot comprehend why he is suddenly being grounded. His master plan was to sneak Taejong out to grind some levels before the main event and leave a whiny couche potato behind. But Hayden explains that starving monsters are prowling the melting snow. It is far too dangerous for his precious son to step outside. Frustrated, our hero demands to know how he is supposed to prepare for the subjugation battle if he cannot even train. The warlord casually drops another bombshell. Haytham isn't going anywhere near a battlefield until he graduates from a mandatory 6-year military academy. Haytham furiously protests the unilateral decision, but Hayden cuts him off by resting a heavy hand near his revolver. The commander shifts the conversation to a much more dangerous topic. Daphne told him all about Haytham's inquiries into Luna Moon. Leaning forward, Hayden locks eyes with our boy and states that he must already know Luna Moon was a player. The junkie freezes, his blood running ice cold at the terrifying realization that an NPC knows the forbidden terminology. He carefully plays along, confirming he knows she wasn't from this world, while internally sweating over the fact that the commander is privy to top-tier player secrets. Years ago, a much younger Hayden stood in the snow with Luna Moon, listening to her speak of absurd, otherworldly things. Her gentle smile made it completely impossible for him to believe her wild claims back then. Back in the present, the warlord buries his face in his hands and confesses that if he had known she would disappear, he would have listened closer. Our hero listens in stunned silence as the hardened veteran exposes his lingering grief. Hayden then shifts the topic, promising to finally explain why he married Daphne instead of the woman he truly loved. He drops the ultimate curveball and reveals that it was Luna Moon herself who orchestrated the loveless marriage. In a brief memory, Luna Moon vanished the moment she realized she was pregnant, leaving behind a single letter ordering him to marry Daphne and take command of the base. The memory fades as Hayden looks up at Haytham to express his profound gratitude for finally finding the child she left behind. Because of this deep paternal love, he reiterates his absolute ban on the boy joining the subjugation, leaving Haytham frustrated by the genuine fatherly concern. Haytham realizes Daphne wasn't the villain who drove his mother away, even if Luna's motives remain a mystery. But he has a much bigger problem on his plate, since the second apocalypse is scheduled to hit in exactly 10 years. He absolutely cannot afford to waste 6 of those years trapped in a military academy, yet warning anyone about the future would make him sound entirely insane. And if he confesses to being a transmigrated player possessing this body, the fiercely protective commander would instantly have him executed for impersonating his son. Leaning over a desk, Haytham desperately brainstorms a way to share his knowledge of the apocalypse without exposing his true identity. Just as Hayden tells him to leave, a highly manipulative idea strikes him. Stopping at the office door, our hero turns back and reminds the commander of a previous promise to share their secrets. He baits the warlord's curiosity. Doesn't Hayden wonder why his son was so completely unfazed by the revelation of Luna Moon's true identity? Looking the commander dead in the eye, Haytham drops an absolutely audacious lie. He claims to be a regressor who has returned from the future. Hayden is completely taken aback by the sheer absurdity of the claim. But my guy doesn't flinch, and stands by his fabricated story with absolute confidence. He knows the warlord can't just brush this off, not when it involves the child of the mysterious player he loved. Our hero weaponizes that lingering grief over Luna Moon to calculate his next move with terrifying precision. The heavy silence shatters as the commander steps forward. Hayden challenges the boy's logic, demanding to know why a supposed time traveler would wait until this exact moment to come clean. To force the warlord's hand, Haytham answers with a chilling warning. He dramatically declares that a second apocalypse will wipe them all out in exactly 10 years, and he refuses to live through that regret a second time. The heavy, ornate doors to the commander's office creak open. Hayden glances up from his paperwork as a familiar voice calls out to him. Mersault snaps a crisp salute, officially reporting back for duty after serving his stint in disciplinary confinement. The commander welcomes him back with a dry observation. The silver-haired subordinate apparently spent his entire punishment grinding away in the research lab. Brushing off the workaholic allegations, Mersault pivots to the real reason he is here. He wants to know if the wild rumors are true about young Haytham participating in the Academy's training. Hayden calmly confirms it and mentions he is finalizing the schedule with the gray-haired man in a suit today, prompting Mersault to ask if he isn't the least bit worried. The aide stresses that while the boy's skills are undeniable, he is still just a kid. Throwing him into a sparring ring against hardened veteran cadets means one single slip-up could leave him permanently crippled. When Hayden asks for the general consensus among the top brass, Mersault admits the other executives are deeply skeptical. The commander leans back in his heavy chair and addresses his aide by name, taking a quiet moment to reflect on their long history. He points out that surviving countless frozen battlefields side by side has taught him to trust one ultimate survival tool: his own intuition. The commander asks if his silver-haired subordinate understands just how many lives a leader's gut feeling can save or end. He silently admits to himself that he didn't buy into the kid's wild story at first either. He recalls our boy's chilling prophecy about a second apocalypse set to wipe out the world in exactly 10 years. During that private meeting, the commander was completely blindsided by the sudden doomsday warning. Our hero calmly acknowledged that his claims sounded like absolute nonsense, but he desperately grabbed the older man's uniform, insisting the horrors of the future were still burned into his brain. The memory fades. The kid's wild lore goes like this. He faces an unavoidable death, only to magically wake up in his 10-year-old body. He remembers it clearly. The child fiercely declared his absolute resolve to stop the impending doom in this second life. My guy pointed out his own unnatural maturity and deep tactical knowledge as hard proof of his regression. Haytham smoothly anticipated the obvious request for future predictions, but warned that it wouldn't be that simple, because the moment he stepped back in time, the butterfly effect had already started altering the timeline he once knew. So rather than relying on shaky prophecies, the boy offered to drop some concrete evidence. He looked the commander dead in the eye and asked for permission to challenge the Academy's training simulation. The sheer audacity of the proposal caught the older man completely off guard. Meanwhile, the comic cuts over to the Cola Zone Academy. On paper, the curriculum is a standard mix of theoretical and practical education designed to prepare cadets for monster combat. But buried deep in the confidential files is a secondary, highly classified training program. It is an anti-personnel simulation, built specifically for fighting other humans. The difficulty is absolutely brutal, pitting experienced cadets against each other in strictly controlled, realistic combat scenarios. Because this isn't just about basic survival. It is a top-secret initiative meant to prepare the next generation for all-out war against the other 8 zones. He remembers it clearly. Commander Hayden immediately demanded to know how an outsider could possibly know about a classified secret restricted to a handful of executives. Our boy didn't even blink. He casually claimed he had already graduated from the academy in his past life. Placing a hand over his heart, the dark-haired boy promised to prove his unbelievable story through pure skill rather than empty words. He bowed respectfully and vowed to pass with top marks, convincing the commander to finally place his faith in the kid. Back in the present, a freshly stamped training plan sits on the commander's desk. Standing up, Hayden asks his aide if he looks like the kind of man to let personal feelings cloud his judgment. He then drops an absolute bombshell. leaving Mersault completely speechless as he casually refers to the kid as his own son. Staring out the brightly lit window, the commander admits that traditional walls and guns just aren't enough to protect them anymore. Mersault takes the hint and decides to trust his own intuition for once. Maybe this strange boy will actually become the salvation of their zone. Meanwhile, the comic cuts to the imposing stone architecture of the academy. Our hero is already standing at attention inside the office of the gray-haired man in a suit. The military academy principal glares daggers at him, clearly unamused by this sudden VIP intrusion. But before the older man can finish his thought, a new voice cuts in, prompting my guy to glance over in surprise. An ash-blonde cadet named Platon steps up to flatly declare that outsiders have absolutely no place in their official training exercises. The game's lore goes like this. He is the Academy's eccentric prodigy and the son of Chief Anlon, but instead of throwing his political weight around, he actively bridges the gap between the rival factions to earn the genuine respect of the entire student body. As he listens to the cadet's impassioned plea, our hero internally notes a massive flaw in the guy's logic. Platon puts his foot down, flatly declaring that a literal child has absolutely no business participating in a live-fire exercise. The principal desperately tries to argue for some flexibility, since the commander himself signed off on this. Meanwhile, Haytham quietly observes the top student's obsession with absolute obedience. Unfazed by the political pressure, the blonde cadet cuts the older man off. He indignantly defends the academy's honor. To him, the mere suggestion of a lenient training session is a straight-up humiliating insult to a member of the Cola Zone. Our guy steps up right beside him and smoothly agrees that he isn't looking for any special treatment either. A nervous sweat breaks out on the principal's face as his offer of a VIP safety net gets politely but firmly rejected. Haytham leans fully into the arrogant young master persona, boldly announcing that he only came here to personally evaluate the skills of these so-called elite cadets. Platon watches him closely. It turns out the rumors about the kid's eccentric personality were completely true. He warns the boy that the simulation is practically actual combat where he could easily get hurt. Haytham brushes the threat off without a second thought. The top student completely misreads the situation, internally commending the kid's apparent willingness to learn and face danger head-on. Platon's strict moral compass won't let him stand by, so he volunteers to join Haytham's squad to balance the team and keep the child safe. The principal is totally on board with the compromise, and Platon figures this is the perfect way to observe the recruit without letting him get slaughtered. But Haytham shuts the offer down instantly. Platon gently tries to explain that relying on teamwork during training isn't something to be ashamed of, only for the kid to quickly correct him. It has nothing to do with pride. He just points out that he can't crush Platon if they are on the same squad, leaving the elite cadet baffled. Our boy casually drops the polite act. He announces that his sole reason for being here is to prove his superiority over the rest of the student body. To him, enrolling in this prestigious military academy is nothing but a huge waste of time. Out on the snowy field, the instructor kicks off the anti-personnel simulation and lays out the simple rules. To win, a squad must either wipe out all their enemies or capture the opposing flag. He taps his chest to explain that the uniform sensors register fatal hits to simulate real combat deaths. Before they can begin, a blonde cadet raises his hand to voice a concern. He points out that they've run drills in this snowy forest countless times, giving them an unfair home field advantage over the new kid. But Haytham immediately shuts down the offer for a level playing field. Flashing a sickeningly polite smile, our boy arrogantly declares he'll win regardless of the terrain. The elite cadets just stare back in dead silence. The moment the instructor turns away, their fury erupts. They furiously complain that the brat is strutting around like he's the commander himself. One soldier assumes my guy is just setting up a preemptive excuse for his inevitable defeat, but their leader steps in. Platon firmly tells his team to stop gossiping behind the boy's back. Platon calmly explains to the squad that our boy actually has perfectly logical reasons for going solo. First, having incooperative hostile allies is far worse than having no backup at all. Second, if the commander's son were to get injured during the exercise, the cadets assigned to protect him would be the ones taking the blame. But it is the third reason that proves our hero's tactical brilliance. Because of his small size, he can easily use the snowy terrain to stay completely hidden. Platon deduces that this entire solo strategy points to one specific objective. He is making a beeline straight for their flag. Since he cannot possibly defeat a whole squad in a head-on firefight, he plans to use stealth to slip right past their patrols. Hearing this flawless breakdown, the naive cadets suddenly assume that Haytham's earlier arrogance was just a calculated move to rile them up. They smile in relief, completely missing the hilarious reality that our guy genuinely was just looking down on them. Regardless, Platon rallies the squad and urges them to match the young master's dedication to the exercise. He orders the main group to march toward Haytham's starting position and make themselves as conspicuous as possible to draw him out. The strategy relies on the main squad acting as bait, so the moment Haytham tries to slip past them, Platon will be waiting right by the flag to snipe him. Pulling his goggles down, the top cadet orders his team to go flush out the rabbit. Fired up, the cadets eagerly charge into the frozen woods. But as the vanguard marches blindly through the snow, Haytham already has them in his sights from a high branch, completely baffled by their terrible tactical formation. With the entire squad grouped up like sitting ducks, our guy decides to just take the free kills. Down below, the lead cadet suddenly freezes as danger washes over him. But it's way too late, and Haytham rains a merciless volley of shots down onto the squad. Meanwhile, back at the base, Platon hears the distant crack of gunfire. Entrenched securely behind a wall of sandbags, he readies his rifle. He knows the young master will be heading his way soon, and he refuses to let his guard down. He remembers it clearly. His father, an older man with a gray beard, had sternly warned him never to underestimate the 10-year-old boy. At the time, Platon had arrogantly wondered how he could put the little brat in his place. Back in the present, the meaning behind that warm smile finally clicks. Our boy isn't putting on some tactical facade. He is a genuine predator, a wolf simply enjoying the thrill of the hunt. The deep thought is cut short when Platon realizes the forest has gone dead silent. He bolts upright in an absolute panic, terrified that his entire squad might already be wiped out. Out of nowhere, a blue projectile slams into the sandbag right in front of him and splashes blue liquid everywhere. The heavy crunch of a boot echoes across the snow. Haytham's voice calls out, casually remarking that Platon is definitely built different from the rest. The elite cadet is completely stunned, his brain fully short-circuiting over how the kid bypassed his sights. He demands to know how my guy found his hiding spot, and the boy simply explains it was a basic process of elimination. Platon tries to keep him talking, desperate to pinpoint his exact location for a counterattack. But as he peeks over his cover, he's met with dead silence. The clearing is a ghost town. Our boy has straight up vanished from the map. Before he can even process the empty sights, a sudden shot blasts the rifle right out of Platon's hands. Our boy materializes right behind him with his weapon drawn, casually pointing out that a mask might hide a face, but it does absolutely nothing to disguise a person's height or the way they walk. Platon stumbles back against the palisade as paint rounds slam into the wood around him, screaming to know how any of this is even possible. He remembers it clearly. Just moments ago, he had his rifle raised, his eye glued to the scope as he tracked his target. But instead of his target, the crosshairs settled on a simple wooden post jammed into the snow. He had spent the entire time aiming at a discarded rifle propped up as a decoy. The horrifying realization finally clicks for Platon. Our boy's tiny stature and light weight turned him into an absolute ghost, making his footsteps completely undetectable. Before Platon can even blink, our hero launches into the air and delivers a devastating strike right to his skull. With a brutal follow-through, he rams the butt of his weapon straight into Platon's chest sensor. A massive notification broadcasts across the sky, officially crowning our boy the undisputed winner of the simulation. Platon stares at the abandoned rifle and asks if his entire squad was wiped out before this. Our boy just smiles, reminding the elite cadet of what he said back at the start. He can manage just fine on his own. Haytham drops into the snow next to the defeated sniper. He admits the trap would have easily crushed any ordinary kid. But his true reason for joining this simulation wasn't just to flex on the academy. He wanted to evaluate Platon's quick judgment and leadership with his own eyes. He declares that the top cadet has officially passed his test. With the simulation won, my guy drops the ultimate recruitment pitch, offering Platon the position of his personal adjutant the second he graduates. A subordinate slides a compiled report onto Commander Hayden's desk. Mersault confirms these are the official evaluations from the cadets who just survived our boy's brutal training session. The warlord silently reviews the documents, taking in the sheer trauma his son inflicted. During the recent evaluations, the first cadet angrily reported that Haytham fought like a cowardly 10-year-old. He recounted how the kid approached two masked cadets in the snowy forest. The boy claimed he had a secret message straight from the commander. Then, without a single second of hesitation, he drew a handgun and fired point blank. Sweating in his chair, the cadet remained completely shell-shocked by how fast his squad collapsed. Another student explained how he cautiously approached a fallen comrade in the snow. That concern was rewarded when Haytham sprang up from the ground and ruthlessly buried a combat knife into his torso. The pink-haired cadet gave a much more analytical evaluation, noting that the kid behaved exactly like an experienced soldier. He admitted that while predicting their tactical movements was simple enough, the pink-haired cadet added that the boy carried out the mission with zero tension. It was as if the kid had slaughtered them 100 times before. The evaluating officer shifted in his seat, unsettled by the observation. But the blue-haired cadet offered the most extreme assessment of all. He simply declared that Hatham was a god. Back in the present, Mersault dismisses the eerie reports, assuming the cadets are just starstruck by a rigged stunt meant to show off the commander's kid. Meanwhile, Hayden calls Mersault to attention in his office. The warlord drops an absolute bombshell. Hatham will take full command of the upcoming subjugation operation. The silver-haired aide's shocked shout rings out through the stone halls of the estate. Later in the planning room, our hero confidently asks Mersault if he is worried the kid will tarnish his reputation. To minimize political backlash from the top brass, the aide is still officially registered as the commander on paper. Pinching the bridge of his nose, Mersault argues that mock training and actual combat are two entirely different beasts. The silver-haired officer admits that the kid's tactical skills are unnervingly outstanding, but he points out a glaring anomaly. Our boy knows the subjugation route way too well for someone who just glanced at a piece of paper. Mersault narrows his eyes and flatly states it's almost as if the teen has actually walked that terrain before. Hatham smoothly plays dumb, knowing he absolutely cannot drop his fake regressor backstory on the aide just yet. Realizing the guy is digging way too close to the truth, our hero slaps the wall to abruptly kill the topic. He aggressively pivots the conversation to declare that they need to stop worrying about maps and start fixing the military's garbage combat methods. He breaks down the standard doctrine. Soldiers always waste time physically restraining a monster before trying to locate and smash its weak point gem. Turning back to the stunned officer, Hatham asks if that doesn't sound like a massively inefficient way to fight. He pitches a radical sequence break. Just snipe the gem right out of the gate and skip the entire boss fight. Mersault immediately shoots the idea down, explaining that while finding the core on a small mob is a breeze, trying to even guess the gem's location on a massive beast is a total shot in the dark. Since subjugation runs exclusively deal with the big guys, the aide dismisses the speedrun strat as completely impossible. Our boy just hits him with a slight smile. He knows exactly how many monsters he slaughtered to clear every single zone in the game. The gems act as vital points, always nestled deep inside the most heavily protected parts of their bodies. After countless playthroughs, his game knowledge lets him intuitively deduce a core's exact location from minimal clues. He confidently tells Mersault he can pinpoint the targets himself. The silver-haired officer is completely taken aback by the impossible claim. Unfazed, Hatham guarantees the subjugation operation will run with maximum efficiency. Later that night, our hero lies in bed, scrolling through his system tablet. He easily dismisses the aide's lingering skepticism, since the plan is already set in motion. But his hand suddenly pauses over the glowing screen. A bizarre message from Totus Possible pops up in the chat, asking if there are actually 2 dopamine addicts. He realizes the channel has completely blown up with urgent notifications while he was offline. Our boy scrolls up through the backlog and pauses when Junkie mentions receiving a highly suspicious DM. The sender's name? None other than Dopamine Addict. He remembers how Safe Zone 8 tried to pull the exact same stunt back at the residence. My guy taps his tablet to ponder if another clout chaser is trying to hijack his legendary status. The chat logs reveal that almost every single player in the channel got hit with the same mass broadcast. The peanut gallery debates whether to open it or ignore it, and the suspense leaves Hatham burning with curiosity. Finally, God drops the actual text. The sender claims that interaction with zones outside the unicorn zone is completely possible. Hatham bolts upright in bed, floored that someone is out here leaking game-breaking intel under his exact username. Luckily, Home Protector steps in to declare it a fake, since a direct message with the imposter gets blocked for anyone already friends with the real deal. The ongoing debate reminds our hero that in the original game, an impenetrable barrier separated the safe zones until the second apocalypse hit. Prompted by the wild speculation, he decides he'll just have to verify the physical boundaries himself during the upcoming subjugation battle. But right as he settles on a plan, a brand new suspicion creeps in. A glitching unicorn emblem flashes as he questions why that specific player would put on such a bizarre show. The chat quickly reaches the same conclusion and pins the stunt on the Unicorn Zone survivor, until Junkie suddenly points out a glaring anomaly in the participant list. Hatham immediately pulls up the roster. Scanning the names, he counts exactly 8 and fails to spot the issue. Everything clicks when the rest of the chat clarifies the math. There aren't 8 people in the room, there are 9. A terrifying realization hits him. On everyone else's screen, his username has been listed twice this entire time. To test the theory, our boy taps the ID he assumed was his own, only for a system window to ask if he wants to send a friend request. It wasn't him. Some absolute psycho has been lurking in the chat under his exact handle from the very beginning. He quickly skims through a flood of frantic direct messages from Home Protector. Deeming the panic useless, my guy dismisses the spam and opens his chat with T. Bauram instead. One glance at the screen leaves his eyes wide with shock. This imposter didn't just steal his identity, T. Baoram reveals the fake is already on his friends list and somehow knows every single detail of their private conversations. Our boy immediately flips the script, firing back that he's the one who should be asking the questions. A wicked smirk spreads across his face in the dark as he issues a direct challenge, demanding to know exactly who the hell this fake really is. Trapped in the brutal knife zone, T. Baoram stews in frustration over a reply that never comes. When the system window finally pings, our boy simply points out that they were already on each other's friends list. Hatham mercilessly mocks him for being dumb enough to fall for a double friend request trick. T. Baoram instantly fires back a furious death threat. The guy is just incredibly easy to provoke. As Hatham wonders how the new chat imposter knows about his private conversations, T. Baoram coincidentally answers his unspoken question. Trying to gather intel, he asks if the fake dopamine addict acted suspiciously, only for T. Baoram to insult him right back. But his rival actually has a solid lead. He confirms the fake is hiding out in the unicorn zone. When Hatham demands proof of this bold claim, T. Baoram reaches into his ragged pocket. He pulls out a perfectly ripe tangerine, dropping the massive reveal that he scored the fresh fruit from the fake through a system trade. The specific item catches Hatham completely off guard. In his head, the game's lore pieces it all together. In a world ravaged by a perpetual ice age, fresh produce is basically a myth, unless you're talking about the unicorn zone. It's a city of scientists with such overwhelming technological supremacy that they literally lifted their entire district into the sky to survive the frost. Thanks to that self-sustaining setup, it's the only place left where the original ecosystem is still perfectly preserved. Back in his room, our guy crosses his arms, completely satisfied with his deduction. The imposter is definitely holed up in the unicorn zone. T. Baoram messages to ask if he plans to investigate, but our hero casually replies that he is leaving the guy alone for now. The next message explains that Hatham is perfectly happy to let the fake act as a free caretaker and clear the territory for him, a level of sheer audacity that leaves T. Baoram completely baffled. T. Baoram points out a glaring flaw in this genius plan. Since the fake is occupying our boy's former main base, he already knows his entire playbook and is currently sitting inside an impenetrable iron fortress of Hatham's own making. But rather than panic, Hatham just chuckles at the warning. The imposter stares back in total confusion. Our guy casually reminds the imposter how he used to religiously study his guides just to devise counters against him, and the call-out makes T. Baoram visibly flinch. He demands to know why his old rival is suddenly acting like victory is impossible. Our hero casually reminds the imposter that he knows every single one of his counters, since the guy was always popping up in his AI recommendations as the one player desperately trying to beat his high scores. Instead of getting defensive, the imposter replies with giddy excitement at being noticed, leaving our boy completely baffled by the sudden shift in tone. Running the numbers, Hatham admits T. Baoram actually has a point. Even with his exclusive perks, taking on the high-stat imposter right now only gives him a 60% chance of victory. The technological gap between the zones is a hurdle even his raw abilities can't brute force. But our boy is already cooking up a workaround. He instructs the imposter to report back if the clone makes contact, finding the guy's sudden obedience a little suspicious. Suddenly, a barrage of new notifications lights up his vision. Couche Potato is frantically spamming the chat, absolutely terrified that a second dopamine addict is operating out there. The blonde teen begs for a carry, and brings up a vague promise about a trip to the unicorn zone. He even tosses over a bribe to secure his future protection, which this guy accepts with a non-committal shrug. Pivoting to strategy, he orders Couche Potato to verify if the interzone barriers have actually fallen, warning that high-level players will immediately exploit the lower tiers. The geographical reality of that threat hits him like a truck. He briefly pictures the dangerous cult leader Manson, fully aware that her love zone sits right next door to Couche Potato. Lying in the dark, our boy hardens his resolve to crush anyone who tries to step on his turf. Sometime later, the comic cuts to the freezing exterior of the base. Heavy boots crunch through the deep powder. The squad heads out on a hunting expedition, though Couche Potato's loud whining about military life threatens to scare off every monster in the area. Our hero ignores the complaints and calmly outlines today's objectives. Result watches the whining blonde with the fond smile of a proud father, while Hatham silently judges the 20-year-old man-child. Taejong trudges along behind them, completely out of his element in the freezing snow. Stepping over a massive monster track, the boss reassures his nervous squad that they won't be doing anything too dangerous. Mersault reminds the group that they are hunting an injured furry crocodile, spotted earlier that morning. The watchtower guards would normally handle a stray beast, but they need a live test for the new gem extraction strategy. Hatham gives a confident nod, guaranteeing his method will leave the carcass perfectly intact. The group then shifts their focus to the prototype combat rations, which look exactly like star-shaped candies. While Mersault launches into a passionate sales pitch about protein density, Hatham completely ignores him to interrogate Couche Potato about his healing abilities. Our guy quickly connects the dots and realizes the blonde can transfer his food absorption powers to others through physical contact. A suspiciously proud smile spreads across the protagonist's face. Couche Potato instantly yells at him, knowing damn well his boss is only happy because he finally found a use for him. Hatham reaches out a gloved hand to test the theory, officially locking in the blonde as the squad's dedicated healer. The group moves out, and our hero quickly spots their target lying dead in the snow. A massive crocodile-like monster. Taejong points out a deep wound on the beast's right flank. Hatham analyzes the corpse's posture and notes that it collapsed on its stomach to protect its injured side. He remembers it clearly. He pinpointed the gem in its left abdomen and executed a flawless one-hit kill. Back in the present, Mersault crouches by the carcass, absolutely amazed that the boy managed to snipe the core with such precision. With the hunt complete, Hatham orders a grumbling Couche Potato to fire a signal flare for transport. My guy flashes a confident smile, explaining that this surgical method shortens the battle and preserves the maximum amount of edible meat. But as the squad waits in the freezing wilderness, the atmosphere suddenly shifts. Heavy footsteps crunch through the snow. A silver-haired teen in a white coat steps into view. It's the high-stat player, the late-game AI clone of Dopamine Addict himself. Standing right in front of them, Couche Potato freezes, his eyes going wide as he stares past our guy. He recognizes the face immediately, dropping a massive cliffhanger to ask if that is Dopamine Addict in the flesh. A pale man with dead black eyes stands before them, looking like a literal ghost in a lab coat. It is a face every veteran of the game instantly recognizes. Taejong immediately calls out to his boss, but our guy gives him a silent shake of the head to hold back. Mersault keeps his rifle trained on the target, coolly acknowledging the order to stand down. Couche Potato, however, completely ignores the tension and excitedly breaks rank to scream out the man's username. Hatham snatches the blonde boy's arm to stop him in his tracks, warning him that this is not the guy he thinks it is. The kid is totally lost, questioning why his leader is suddenly hesitating when he is supposed to be a massive fanboy. The sinister aura radiating off the white-haired man screams absolute danger to Hatham. The mysterious figure finally speaks up to address the squad's doubts. He casually suggests they just use the system's profile feature to verify his identity. The glowing interface hovers in the air as a tempting way to uncover the truth. Even with the offer on the table, our hero remains highly skeptical. Our boy realizes the stranger is a dead ringer for his own custom character. More importantly, he wonders why this guy is the only player who spawned as a full-grown adult. Couche Potato steps up to test the waters, and the man immediately drops the blonde boy's username. The blonde fanboy absolutely beams, thrilled to be acknowledged by a top-tier gamer. But his smile vanishes when he notices the rest of the squad still has their rifles locked on the target. Hatham coldly shuts down the confusion and declares this is just standard military procedure. The white-haired man flashes a reassuring smile and promises he means them no harm. Our hero calls out the blatant lie without lowering his weapon. The man smoothly pivots to a taunt, pointing out that the squad leader is too tense to even open a system window. Frustrated that the enemy has a point, Hatham finally bites the bullet and initiates the profile view. A notification pings into existence to display an impossible username, Dopamine Addict. My guy is completely stunned to see his own gamer tag staring back at him, but then he spots a glaring anomaly in the status window. The man's exclusive title is also registered as Dopamine Addict. Hatham demands to know how he pulled that off, but the white-haired man just plays dumb. He flat out refuses to spill his late-game secrets to a novice. Realizing he won't get a straight answer, our hero decides to pivot the interrogation. A bloody assassination unfolds at a desk, leaving Hatham wondering why this imposter is traveling with Mersault when a rival should have poisoned him by now. The realization creeps in that this might just be some lunatic overly immersed in role-playing as the legendary gamer. Suddenly, Couche Potato interrupts the standoff with a massive epiphany. He dramatically points out the glaring age discrepancy. Every other player arrived in this world as a 10-year-old. Hatham is utterly exasperated that it took his teammate this long to notice the obvious. The white-haired man taps his temple, openly mocking the blonde boy's intelligence. He decides the kid is simply too stupid to live, and casually reaches into his coat. Our boy spots the movement instantly. He snaps his rifle up and fires, perfectly blasting the handgun right out of the lunatic's grasp. Couche Potato absolutely loses his mind over the friendly fire, but Hatham calmly brushes it off as a simple warning shot. Besides, the game system strictly prevents players from killing each other anyway. The white-haired man just shrugs off the attack, protected by a glowing digital shield that easily absorbed the impact. He summons a futuristic hoverboard to leave, casually declaring that his mysterious check is complete. Then he drops an absolute bombshell, claiming he was just checking to see if his younger self was growing up well. Our hero seethes at the sheer condescension, deeply frustrated by the massive power gap between his outdated weapon and this endgame monster. But just as the man is about to float away, he suddenly pauses. With a sinister grin, he aims a massive futuristic cannon right back down at the novices. Couche Potato completely freezes as the terrifying barrel locks onto him. A deafening shot rings out, and Hatham dives directly into the line of fire to take the hit. Our hero takes the blast straight to the chest, a massive spray of blood painting the snow red. The white-haired man slowly lowers his weapon to observe the carnage below. He mutters that this pathetic display of self-sacrifice proves they really are different. Taejong screams for his boss as the attacker hops on a hoverboard and vanishes into the winter sky. Mersault rushes in to assess the damage, quickly confirming the shot miraculously missed Hatham's vitals. He barks an order for Taejong to secure the perimeter before the scent of blood draws in any monsters. Couche Potato desperately applies pressure to the gaping wound with shaking hands and tear-filled eyes. The blonde soldier angrily rants about the psychotic attacker, only for our boy to dryly remind him that he isn't actually dead yet. Couche Potato breaks down, demanding to know why Hatham would ever risk his own life to protect him. My guy just looks up from the blood-stained snow with a perfectly calm, deadpan expression. He simply shoves a blue crystal into Couche Potato's hand and bluntly demands a heal. The memory of an earlier conversation clicks into place, and a horrifying realization hits Couche Potato. This absolute psychopath intentionally took a bullet just to test his healing mechanic in a live combat scenario. Couche Potato completely loses it, screaming at our hero for being an unhinged psychopath. Muttering about the sheer lack of sanity, the blonde soldier presses a glowing hand to the chest wound and forces it closed. With his health safely restored, Hatham abruptly drops the act and calls Couche Potato by his real name. He leans in close to leverage the so-called rescue, and announces he has a serious confession to make. Couche Potato leans in to listen, only to freeze in shock as my guy finally whispers his true identity. The truth finally clicks. Taejong completely loses his mind and screams at the top of his lungs. He grabs our hero by the collar and furiously demands to know why he hid the fact that he is the real dopamine addict. Hatham dryly points out that the redhead wouldn't have believed him anyway, a harsh truth that makes Taejong cringe at the memory of his own embarrassing fanboy rants. Meanwhile, Couche Potato uses his glowing green magic to seal the gunshot wound, intentionally leaving it partially open to avoid drawing Mersault's suspicion. The blonde healer is still incredibly salty that his rival got to know the truth before him. Our boy explains he only dropped the reveal to protect Taejong from the very first imposter. This just makes Couche Potato wonder why anyone would even want to impersonate a sociopath in the first place. Jokes aside, the trio acknowledges that this new white-haired copycat is a genuine threat. A system window confirms the attacker unlocked the late-game unicorn zone, and Hatham reveals the guy is actively messaging other players under his name. This drops a massive bombshell on the group. If the imposter traveled all the way out here, there are no barriers between the game's zones. But my guy points out the most dangerous and anomalous detail of all. This new enemy is the only player who actually looks like a full-grown adult. Couche Potato theorizes that the unicorn zone might possess forced growth technology, perhaps involving a glowing sci-fi pod. But our boy dismisses the sci-fi theory, absolutely certain there's a much darker reason at play. He knows for a fact he is the real dopamine addict, but the uncanny similarities between them are deeply unsettling. Honestly, more than anything, he's just pissed off that the guy had the nerve to treat him like some clueless novice. Their plotting is abruptly cut short when a child soldier comes sprinting through the snow to announce Mersault's return. The two teens immediately snap into action. Hatham orders Couche Potato to keep his mouth completely shut about everything that just went down. Then he dramatically throws himself onto a stretcher and perfectly plays the role of a wounded victim to keep his cover intact. Meanwhile, back at the base, the rumor mill is already spinning out of control. Soldiers gossip in the halls about how Commander Hayden didn't even bat an eye at his son's bloody injury. But behind closed doors, the warlord stands over Hatham's bed and calmly acknowledges his miraculous healing abilities. Then he drops an absolute nuke of a question, demanding to know exactly who was controlling the boy's body before now. Hatham's mind races as he frantically calculates his next move. Our boy plays it cool. He offers a cryptic half-answer about knowing the guy once upon a time. Hayden leans in close, dropping the absolute bombshell assumption that his son means someone from a past life. The realization hits him like a truck. Mersault must have snitched to the warlord about them using the word player, and that single slip-up perfectly set up this massive misunderstanding. He decides to just roll with it. This regressor lie is the ultimate cheat code to skip the grueling military academy entirely. Clutching his chest with Oscar-worthy drama, my guy feeds the commander a total fabrication about the imposter. He claims his time travel stunt must have caused a brand new anomaly to spawn, it neatly shifts the target completely off his own back. The warlord swallows the bait hook, line, and sinker. Our hero throws a mental victory party. He is completely convinced he just secured his VIP free pass. Until Hayden shatters those dreams into a million pieces, he orders the boy to pack his bags for the academy anyway. Haytham tries to argue his way out, but the commander insists that even a seasoned veteran needs basic training to adjust to a child's physical stats. Patting the teen's head, Hayden drops a heavy guilt trip. He uses Luna Moon's tragic death as a grim reminder of what happens to the careless. But as he turns for the door, the warlord offers a slight compromise. The warlord clarifies it is only a temporary stint until the next subjugation campaign kicks off, just long enough to officially pin an officer's rank on his chest. Our boy rationalizes the detour, since he needs a proper military title to act as a strategist anyway. But then Hayden drops the actual graduation requirement. He isn't allowed to leave until he can physically dodge incoming bullets. Meanwhile, over at the academy, the regular cadets sit completely unaware of the monster heading their way. Nasty rumors are already spreading like wildfire about a squad of elites who supposedly lost a 6-on-1 fight to a literal child. The defeated teens sit in humiliated silence, crushed by the guilt of tarnishing Platin's flawless reputation. The ash-blonde cadet maintains his dignity and reassures his squad that they fought fair and square. A few days ago, Mersault slapped a strict gag order on the entire simulation, leaving the team completely unable to defend themselves against the gossip. The bitter whispers are abruptly cut short when the instructor calls the classroom to attention. He stands at the front of the room to announce a highly important new arrival. The entire class leans in to listen, and our hero casually strolls through the door, formally introduced to the stunned room as young Master Hayden. He flashes a sickeningly sweet smile, and the cadets who faced him in the simulation flinch in absolute terror. They are already drowning in a sea of blame, knowing this hypocritical innocent act will only make their loss look even more pathetic. The instructor assumes there are no objections to the admission, but a single hand shoots up from the back. The blonde cadet with purple eyes rises from his desk and directly challenges the new arrival. He arrogantly distances the rest of the room from the 6 losers, and claims the other students aren't nearly that pathetic. Our boy doesn't miss a beat, boldly asking if the rest of the class actually believes they can take him down. He casually drops that the commander already acknowledged his skills, but graciously offers a second test for the doubters. Stepping forward, he makes it known that his flawless victory had absolutely nothing to do with luck. With a confident smirk, he formally challenges the entire class to a rematch to settle the debate once and for all. The blonde cadet with purple eyes accepts the terms. Deep down, he completely underestimates the arrogant little brat. He frames the upcoming clash as a chessboard. The proposed 6 versus 6 match pits the new arrival and the previous losers against the rest of the elite class. My guy agrees to the setup, but he decides to throw in his own special handicap. Our hero casually declares that if even a single member of his squad drops, he will forfeit the match on the spot. On the flip side, the opposing team only needs one survivor to claim victory. The blonde cadet with purple eyes glares daggers, absolutely furious at the sheer disrespect of the handicap. But our boy isn't just throwing out wild conditions to be cocky. In the dormitory hallways, his newly formed squad is already having a full-blown meltdown. He just wants to head to his room to unpack, completely unbothered. The black-haired cadet aggressively confronts him, demanding to know why he would doom them with such an impossible rule. The group is terrified. They are already the laughingstock of the academy, and they picture themselves getting expelled if they lose this match over a single elimination. Instead of getting defensive, Haytham calmly analyzes the situation. The blonde-haired cadet misinterprets this quiet demeanor as arrogance, and demands to know if he is looking down on them. Our hero sharply calls out Lucas's hypocrisy, pointing out that judging an opponent without even fighting them is a disgrace to the academy. The rebuke hits its mark and Lucas visibly flinches. Haytham clenches his fist and reminds the group of the older boy's exact threat to wipe them out in front of everyone. He flips the script and tells them that a public match is actually the perfect stage to prove their exceptional talent. Internally, this guy views these cadets not as comrades, but as valuable future NPCs who will hold high-ranking positions after graduation. He knows they are only acting pathetic right now, because their egos were completely shattered after losing to a 10-year-old kid. Our guy really just wanted to unpack his bags in peace, completely unprepared for a morning melodrama. But if he wants to groom these kids into a fiercely loyal NPC workforce, he knows he has to dangle a very shiny carrot. He addresses the squad directly to ask why he went out of his way to pick them, prompting the teens to shake their heads in confusion. Raising a single hand to command the room, he lets the silence stretch. The gray-haired cadet finally takes the bait, and confidently asserts that they were chosen for being the undisputed top of their class. Haytham immediately nods along, and shamelessly inflates their fragile egos by calling them the absolute best the academy has to offer. The flattery doesn't work on everyone, as the white-haired cadet nervously points out that they just suffered a humiliating defeat at his hands. Like a grandmaster sliding pawns across a board, our hero flashes a predatory smile and drops his win condition 0 eliminations. He challenges their lingering doubts with a sharp question. Do they seriously believe his previous victory was just a lucky break? A few days ago, he cornered the spiky black-haired cadet over a mop to call out the squad's glaring negligence. The older boy flinched under the intense scrutiny, and finally realized that their miserable loss stemmed from letting their guard down. Back in the present, Hatham flashes a charismatic smile and makes a bold promise. If they follow his lead unconditionally, he will hand them an absolute victory. Later, in his newly unpacked dorm room, our guy is just trying to settle in. Stretching tall, he reaches up to grab a heavy book from a ridiculously high shelf. A sharp spike of pain immediately shoots through his arm, forcing him to wince. The teen has been deliberately suppressing his game body's instant healing to keep the bullet wound open, fully aware that recovering too fast would make Mersault highly suspicious. Suddenly, a voice interrupts his struggle and offers a helping hand. Hatham tries to brush the help off, but it's Mersault, the top cadet he recently crushed, who casually mentions that he already knows about the injury. Our hero's mind races since Chief Anlon placed a strict gag order on that gunshot wound. He figures Executive Anton must have a massive network of informants, likely tipped off by the dramatic, siren-blaring fuss Hatham made at the hospital. In a memory from a few days ago, the older man explicitly ordered his son to keep the classified information strictly confidential. Mersault actually shows genuine concern and advises Hatham to postpone the upcoming match to focus on his recovery. The realization hits our boy. His previous offer to make the elite cadet his adjutant worked perfectly, and Mersault is now actively trying to look out for him. Seeing a golden opportunity, Hatham pivots and mentions that he overheard some nasty rumors about the other cadets mocking Mersault's squad while he was hospitalized. The top cadet immediately looks insecure, quietly asking if his new commander is disappointed in them. Our boy steps forward to assure him that couldn't be further from the truth. Instead, he declares he needs to participate in the match to publicly prove just how highly competent Mersault's squad truly is. The elite cadet is visibly moved by this apparent dedication to their honor. Swallowing the bait hook, line, and sinker, Mersault pledges to do absolutely whatever it takes to win the exercise so Hatham can rest. Our hero then casually reminds him that the simulation is a strict 6-on-6 match. He breaks down the simple math, treating the equal numbers like pawns on a chessboard, but for Hatham to join the squad and lead them to victory, someone has to step down. Leaning in with a cold, calculating glare, Hatham weaponizes Mersault's own pledge against him, and ruthlessly demands the top cadet drop out of the training for the sake of the team. The comic cuts to the day of the second training simulation. A vast snow-covered forest serves as the frozen battlefield for the second round. Leading Team B, the purple-eyed blonde cadet Lucas confirms their base inspection is fully complete. He checks in with his subordinates, ordering them to hold a strict perimeter while they wait for the scouting party to return. The vigilant atmosphere breaks when one of the grunts brings up a juicy rumor. Word on the grapevine is that the top cadet completely turned his back on Team A. The light brown-haired subordinate claims that Mersault, a guy famous for carrying stragglers, dropped out of the match entirely, and told his squad it was a lost cause. The rest of the squad laughs it off, assuming the veteran just didn't want to clean up the mess made by a naive young master. Lucas stays dead silent. Remembering our hero's terrifyingly calculating demeanor, he seriously doubts the naive label. He barks at his team to keep their guard up, warning them not to repeat Mersault's mistake of underestimating the commander's son. Suddenly, the blonde leader spots his scouting party rushing back way ahead of schedule. The scouts arrive completely out of breath and frantically report that they stumbled onto something bizarre. Right outside their camp perimeter, they discovered a small child collapsed face down in the freezing snow. Lucas and his squad stare in absolute disbelief, realizing the tiny figure has to be the commander's son. They hesitate to approach a potential trap, but the blonde leader quickly assumes the worst, that the rumors were true and Team A really did mutiny. As our boy lies completely motionless face down in the snow, the rival squad is left to wonder just what kind of brutal betrayal went down over a simple training simulation. Meanwhile, back at Team B's main camp, the rest of the squad is getting anxious. They start wondering what is taking the blonde cadet so long to return. Vons quickly tells everyone to chill out. He is completely confident that their cool-headed leader has already taken care of the arrogant brat. Hearing footsteps crunching in the snow, Vons turns around with a smug grin. But that confidence evaporates the second his jaw hits the floor. Lucas marches right into the camp carrying our boy completely hogtied like a captured mob drop. Dropping the captive in the snow, Lucas listens as Hatham spins a pathetic tale about how his own squad ambushed him right out of the gate. Hatham remembers how, earlier in the simulation, The supposed mutiny played out with Team A absolutely screaming at their young commander. They furiously accused him of throwing away their best player, Platin, and told him to go die alone in the cold. Back in the present, our hero plays the ultimate victim card by claiming the cadets stripped his weapons and abandoned him. The enemy squad just stares, demanding to know if this guy seriously benched the academy's top cadet. Our boy puts on his best innocent face, claiming he only benched the top cadet to prevent a clash of leadership. Vons isn't buying the sob story for a second, and immediately suggests they execute the brat right here to end the match. But the rest of the squad starts murmuring as they realize Team A is just using them to do their dirty work. They argue over whether it's actually right to gun down a defenseless prisoner. Vons watches in frustration as the captive's mere presence fractures their teamwork. The consensus is clear. An unearned victory over a betrayed kid would be completely dishonorable. Losing his patience, Vons steps up to do the deed himself, but Lucas barks an order for him to stand down, with a slick spin of his combat knife. The blonde cadet slices right through our hero's bindings. Taking command, Lucas announces a massive shift in strategy. They will leave the boy here and hunt down Team A's regular cadets for a proper win. He assigns Cohen and Harry to stay behind to guard both the prisoner and their flag. With the new plan set, the main assault force marches out into the snow. They quickly disappear into the tree line, leaving the camp far behind. Out in the frozen woods, Team B pushes forward to execute their new strategy. Vons pulls up alongside his squad leader, openly voicing his disappointment in the blonde cadet's soft approach. He reminds Lucas that the entire point of this match was to teach that arrogant brat a brutal lesson. But Lucas argues that taking a cheap shot at a captive won't actually humble the guy. Vons reluctantly agrees that executing a defenseless prisoner is just shameful, and he quickly snaps at his teammates when they start mocking his sudden burst of morality. Suddenly, a sharp whistle pierces the freezing air. A red signal flare explodes high above the tree line directly over their main camp. Lucas's eyes go wide as the terrifying realization hits him. Sprinting back to base, the squad finds their blue flag completely plastered in bright orange paint, and standing right next to it is our hero, absolutely drenched in the same neon splatters. The returning cadets panic and rush forward to demand what just happened. Our boy spins a desperate story, claiming his own squad just ambushed the camp to swipe the objective. He swears the other guards were dragged off into the woods the second they fired the flare. Playing the ultimate martyr, my guy explains he exploited a massive loophole. He threw his body over the flag since friendly fire doesn't register as an elimination. Hearing this, Vons aggressively racks the bolt of his rifle. He quickly deduces that the attackers have to still be lurking somewhere in the trees. Taking total command, Vons orders Lucas to sweep the perimeter with the rest of the squad. He promises to execute the captive on the spot if a firefight breaks out. Lucas gives a sharp nod, completely buying into the manufactured urgency of the crisis. He turns on his heel and leaves the camp's defense entirely in his teammates' hands. The patrol vanishes into the snowy timber, and a heavy silence falls over the base. The exact second they are out of earshot, our hero drops the terrified victim routine and tells Vons to cut the pathetic acting. A confident smirk spreads across his face as he points out the obvious. Vons deliberately sent his own squad away just to get him alone. Vons stares right back and admits it. He had to clear the area because the rest of his team was way too stupid to see through the boy's lies. Vons jams his rifle barrel directly against our hero's head, ready to end the match on the spot. But Hatham doesn't even flinch, casually throwing an insult back in the older cadet's face. Vons just brushes it off and mentions the kid reminds him of another annoying brat he knows. He begins to squeeze the trigger, fully intending to eliminate the boy, but my guy just smiles. He calmly points out one fatal flaw in Vons's logic. He never actually said his team left the camp. And right on cue, the cloaked blue cadet emerges from the snow to aim a rifle at Vons's back. Vons spins around in absolute horror. Hatham remembers how, before the simulation started, he secretly ordered Platin to drop out of the match entirely, just to sell the fake mutiny story. Back in the present, Vons realizes the discord was a complete lie, as he finds himself staring down the barrel of the cloaked blue cadet's rifle. He desperately tries to calculate his odds in a sudden one-on-one fight. That math falls apart the second he realizes our boy is also aiming a handgun at his chest, cheerfully thanking the older cadet for sending Lucas away. A furious scream tears through the snowy pines, instantly silenced by a single gunshot that seals Team B's humiliating defeat.